I should be doing homework, but I'm not. And I saw this from James White. There's a lot of stuff I could talk about, but I didn't know if anybody would be interested. So I could be doing Job, could be doing lots of things, but here I am doing this. Anyway, so let's see what James White has to say. The Jews and abortion.
Greetings, welcome to the Dividing Line Road Trip Edition number 1. Actually, for this trip, I am, well, I'm obviously near Houston because the air is thick. Coming from the desert where since January, the dew point's been like down near freezing. Dry. And will be till the end of May, really into June. Wow, humidity, yay. yeah, actually got a little rain and, it's just cloudy and yeah. But anyway, we're here. Over halfway across the nation of Texas. Now we actually get to Lafayette, Louisiana tomorrow, where I will be speaking in the evening, Lord willing. Get there.
James White
will have flat tires or engine problems or whatever else could possibly happen. I hope they do have backup plan just in case.
Always need to have. And it's kind of sad seeing people not actually taking on the anti-Semites.
When the itinerant preacher.
Although I saw Charlie Kirk actually gave a very good answer to somebody who, one of the noticers, came to ask him about the Talmud.
Is coming through. I bet you probably had to have that during the Methodist circuit rider days. What if the horse went lame? Did they have a deacon with a sermon, in the back of his Bible just in case? I bet they did. We get to Lafayette and then on to Livingston for the debate on Friday. Really looking forward to that with Doug Levesque. And then teaching there at the church on Saturday night and then preaching Sunday morning. So trip's gone pretty well so far. No major issues. I do have the distinct feeling that I-10 will be under construction around San Antonio forever and will never, ever be finished. It is a horrible, horrible thing to drive a beast this big through those narrow lanes where you've got the cement barriers on each side. Because it's not so much that that's hard to do. It's that these guys in semi-tractor trailers think it's the Daytona 500. And I mean, I pull my mirrors in. I can have them extended so I can see. I pull them in when I'm in there. That's how close we get. And today I look in my rearview mirror and this guy's coming up on my left. I'm going the speed limit, but he's coming up on my left. He's a wide load. I have no idea because I had maybe 3 inches beyond the line over on this side. He had about 2 inches on that side. I don't know how that even happened. I don't even know how that even happened. But yeah, somehow got through and all the windows are still intact. Aren't any big long gashes along the side. Anything. It really seemed like one of those cartoons, where everything gets really skinny for a while. Yeah, it was. Yeah. So anyway, here we are. And if you want some insight into how demanding some of us C and B listers are, Skip Rainbow, I'll be speaking at Skip Rainbow's church at the end of this trip. Well, before I start heading back anyways, end of the Louisiana Loop up there outside of Shreveport. And he said, hey, since you're preaching in the morning, Sunday school, I've been going through church history. Love that. And we're up to Augustine. Would you like to do 40 minutes on Augustine? And I said, well, it's going to cost you. It's going to cost you. If you want me there that early, if I have to start talking about Augustine at 10 o'clock in the morning, you need to have some yummy, fresh maple frosted donuts there at 9:45. That's, everybody's got their price. So that's my price, is some maple frosted donuts with enough time to eat it and hence experience the sugar rush and crash during the lecture. So yeah, that's us big boys. That's how we do it, is we make our demands that way. So on the program today, let's see, how do I do that? I think I do that. There we go. I'm going to be doing stuff I've never done before. Okay, so we're gonna mess up a few times. It's not going to be pretty. Just have to live with it. I'm on the road doing this on my own. Rich has made it as simple as he can, but I'm still simpler. So we'll do our best. What I wanted to do today on the program is I wanted to, first of all, look at where'd that go? Oh, did I separate the window out? I did. There it is. All right, here's the window. Last week, Jeff Durbin had the opportunity of testifying before a committee in the Capitol in Georgia. And I just realized I did not recue this, unfortunately. Let me see if I can at least get close. Yeah, I think this will be fairly close. I don't like to say as always because each time is a challenge, but there are very few men. Bradley Pierce, Jeff Durbin, Brian Gunter, the pastor of the church that I will be doing the debate at and preaching at this weekend there in Livingston. There are very few men who on their deathbed will be able to think back on how they stood before the governmental authorities of this nation and not only pled for the lives of preborn children, but brought the gospel to bear. Didn't play politics. Didn't try to create a political bloc by trading favors, but looked our elected officials in the eye for what they are. They're human beings who will stand sooner or later in judgment before God. And they will answer for what they did in this life. And Jeff is just, it's God wires us in certain ways. People have always asked me, how can you stay so calm in debates? Well, I don't always stay so calm in debates, but yeah, I learned a long time ago that the more crazy your opponent gets, just give them more rope. And the way to do that is to chill out, let them make a fool of themselves. That's what they're gonna do. Let them do. And Jeff does that in these situations because these wild-eyed leftists come after him from every angle, and he just remains calm and just reasons presuppositionally with them. He is a presuppositionalist. He has done debates. He and I have done debates together. He's done debates with other folks, with atheists. He's utilizes the presuppositional method, where you recognize that the person with whom you're speaking is made in the image of God, and they live in God's world. But since they are in rebellion against God, they cannot reason consistently. I did not say they cannot reason. They cannot reason consistently. And so the presuppositional apologist's job is to let them speak. It won't take them long for them to hand you the handcuffs and the key to take them captive, because they're made in God's image. They live in God's world. They're trying to pretend they can make their own world, but they can't do it. They will eventually trip up and give you what you need to be able to press home the point. It's called an internal critique, where you take their stated presuppositions and their words, their reasoning, and demonstrate the inconsistency and incoherence, because they will eventually contradict themselves. And then over against that, you demonstrate the coherence and consistency of God's word with God's world. And you then pray that God will bring conviction to the heart that you need to be consistent, that you need to glorify your creator, that you need to submit to your creator. Only the Spirit of God can bring that. And what you don't do is try to work on their emotions. You don't try to trick them into doing things. That's not how the Holy Spirit works. He's the Spirit of truth. So you do what you need to do. So I wouldn't mind playing the whole testimony that Jeff gave. It's online. Go to the endabortionnow.com YouTube channel. I highly recommend that you listen to the whole thing. Give thanks to God for the opportunity to do this. Realize that, unfortunately, while the pro-life movement has been active for years and years and years, this kind of gospel-based facing of the magistrate, calling them to repentance, warning them of the coming judgment, and basically straightforward telling them, if you do not do this, you will be judged for the lives that will be lost as a result. I mean, that's not how you win friends and influence people, unless you actually believe that the Spirit of God is absolutely necessary to bring about anything. And Jeff and I are both post-millennialists. We believe that Christ will be victorious, that all of his enemies will be placed under his feet, that he must reign until those enemies are placed under his feet. And as a result, we can have confidence. And one of the things that converted me, honestly, was when I thought about the fact, do I really believe that God could convert the nations? And it's like, well, if you're a Calvinist, you're sort of stuck with that, aren't you? Because if he could have saved me and people in my family, people in my church, obviously you just do that to a greater extent in his time and in his way. And so I had to admit, well, of course he could. Well, then what do you do with the promise?
Well, I mean, this is the problem of Cal. One day, like, it's kind of funny. Like, yeah, you just handed the handcuffs and the keys. Like, sorry, but this isn't how the world works. It's been 2,000 years, Mr. White. What makes you so sure it's within your lifetime that this is going to happen?
Promises, to the son, ask and I'll give the nations as your inheritance. The son didn't ask. The son isn't going to ask, or is it just simply, it's a matter of time? I had a guy in Twitter.
Yeah, he always wears fabulous shirts. Yep, he's definitely an apologist. I delegate my religious feelings to the believers. I know they'll pray for me. The logic is flawless. Is it really? There's a bunch of you watching. I mean, if you just want to watch James White talk, you could go on his channel and listen.
Just a little while ago, I had made reference to, and it's interesting, Jeff has testified before the legislature in Colorado, and man, Colorado is one of the most beautiful states around. It's beautiful. I love going up there, but I'll be honest, after this summer, I'm not sure if I'm going to continue doing that. If I'm going to be consistent, it's becoming as bad as California. The leftists there are just whacked out, and they're throwing this bill out where it's just like California. We can take your kids away from you if you misgender them. If they say if you've got a boy, it says he's a girl. You've got to do hormones, all the rest of this stuff. I mean, it is just satanic evil, absolutely satanic evil. It's astonishing. And I posted about it on Twitter, and this guy's go, well, it doesn't really look like your post-mill thing's working real well. I'm like, you don't understand what post-millennialism is. There are valleys, there are highs. It's not a straight ascent upward.
Why? Like, it's post-millennialism. Like, come on.
There are nations that fall, empires that fall, and that's not what it's about.
It's almost like Jesus didn't accomplish anything.
But a lot of people misunderstand all that. So I just tried to direct him to some resources that would help him. So anyway, I would encourage you to go to endabortionnow.com. I'm sorry. Well, I'm sure the links are there too. But to the End Abortion Now YouTube page, and listen to the whole encounter, and to listen to how masterfully, how professionally and yet passionately, without compromise, that Jeff deals with these leftist arguments as they are presented to him in this committee meeting, and just for all the Christian nationalists running around talking about Christian princes and all the rest of that stuff, who's actually standing in front of these people and calling them to repentance, calling them to submission to Christ? Yeah. So what happened was there was an encounter.
Yeah, you can't even get like a reasonable limits on abortion bill passed in many places. Was just looking at the Wisconsin election. The Democrats look like they've won by 10 points. Yeah, these post-millennialists and amillennialists and yeah.
With a Jewish representative, a woman. She says she's the only Jewish elected representative in the state of Georgia. Okay.
Yeah, I don't even know if she's Jewish.
And I don't know if somebody clipped it. I don't know if End Abortion Now had clipped it, just what it was. But it was posted a few days ago. It was posted on, I think, Thursday of last week. And it was posted by Joel Webbon.
I'm sure she was Reform. Probably, maybe even Reconstructionist.
And he criticized Jeff's interaction with this woman. So I want to listen to the interaction. And then I want to talk about what it means to actually be a presuppositionalist, which Joel once said he was, but I don't think he ever understood it, and hence defend Jeff's approach from the accusation made by Joel Webbin. And again, I given that this coming weekend is the Trash World Conference, I don't think the self-evident accusation that Joel doesn't understand presuppositionalism is going to be all that big of a deal, because my belief is that the vast majority of these guys who once said they were this, including theonomists, presuppositionalists, postmillennialists, I think they'll abandon all of it, because Stephen Wolfe doesn't believe in any of that and considers it unreformed and ahistorical and all the rest of that kind of stuff. He doesn't understand it either, but hey, he's the man now. So I doubt that my going, hey, look, Joel Webbin doesn't even recognize someone arguing presuppositionally. For presuppositionalists, that's sort of scary. But I don't think that's going to have much of a long-term impact, because I think eventually he's going to go, yeah, this natural law thing, I'd never really given it consideration, but now I have, and yeah, it's really important. And so yeah, Van Til missed it, and go read this book there, that thing. We've seen that happen a lot lately. It's not because the argument is compelling, it's just because the people had been what they were out of popularity. This is the cool thing to be. This is what the cool kids are doing. And so it's really easy to abandon that. So I'm hoping this is going to work. The microphone is on. Let me put it this way. I did this in a test mode on Twitter with Rich half an hour ago, and it worked just fine. But my experience with electronic equipment is, yeah, it doesn't mean nothing that it worked half an hour ago. We will find out here in a moment. Let's like I said, I wasn't sure exactly where this was queued up to. I may have to interrupt it. Let's see how it goes. Whoop.
Life of the mother is more important than the life of an unborn.
Okay, hold on.
Are you telling me that representative in the state of Georgia? Judaism posits that the life of the mother is more important than the life of an unborn. Are you telling me that I don't have a right to my religious liberty?
Well, no, everyone would appeal to an ultimate authority over all of us. And one of the things that I respect and admire about Judaism is that we share the same scriptures, the Torah, the Talmud, and not the Talmud, sorry, the Torah, and the law of the prophets. And scripture does teach, without question, that from fertilization, all human life begins, and that we are uniquely made by God, created in the wombs of our mothers, and known by God. And so with that, Judaism, as well as Christianity, would teach that every human being must be protected and given equal justice. One of the laws of Moses that's repeated over and over is no partiality.
So the scriptures are pretty clear. Obviously, an unborn life is a life, and should be protected, and et cetera, et cetera. But there's no equivalence, and that can be seen clearly in the scripture itself, between a miscarriage or causing a miscarriage, causing a child, causing an unborn human to die, and the life of the mother. The Bible clearly makes this distinction. I could look up the verses. How do you spell ason? Ason. I think that's how you spell ason. Exodus 21:22. וכי ינצו אנשים ונגפו אישה הרה ויצאו ילדיה ולא יהיה אסון אנוש יענש כאשר ישית עליו בעל האישה ונתן בפלילים. ואם אסון יהיה ונתת נפש תחת nafesh. So this word ason, which is used here, gets translated in different ways, tragedy, right? But what it says is two men are struggling against each other, right? V'nagfu isha hara, and they bump into, they hurt a woman who is pregnant, v'yatsu yaladeha, and she miscarries, her children come out of her. V'lo yihye ason, but there is no ason. What does it mean? Ason. We would say that she is not harmed herself. Anoshi anesh ka'asher yashit alav ba'al ha'isha, that there is this court-appointed fine as the husband of the wife comes to in judgment. V'natan biflilim, and he shall pay as the judges determine. Ve'im ason yihye, but if there is ason, if there is harm, if she gets harmed, v'natata nefesh tachat nafesh, and you shall give for a life for a life, ayin tachat ayin, shen tachat shen, yad tachat yad, regel tachat ragel, eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot. Kiviyah tachat kiviyah, petza tachat petza, chabura tachat chabura. Right? So these are the laws of monetary damages, and if a person inadvertently kills another human being, there are monetary fines, right? But very quite explicitly here in Exodus 21, the Bible distinguishes between a human life and an unborn child. Based on that, Judaism teaches quite clearly that Young God says, watching Jacob read Hebrew texts from Sefaria is better than watching Amazon Prime's House of David. Wouldn't know, haven't read it. And you're right, why does he have tattoos? He probably shouldn't. But in any case, so there is a distinction made in the Bible itself between a miscarriage and the inadvertent death of a human being. Again, Exodus 21, it's quite clear. Christians often try to translate this in such a way that velo yeh ason means the child is born and there's no v'yatsu, because it says v'yatsu yaladeha, and her child comes out velo yeh ason, that there's no tragedy because the child is born. Well, if the child is born, what's he paying for? Right? I mean, anyway, but this is the difference here. And the reason why Orthodox Jews stay kind of away from the Christian position is we don't want you telling us how to exegete Exodus 21. And yes, Hammurabi conspiracy. Okay. So back to James White.
Treat everybody equally. And the point that I was making, Representative, and I appreciate you asking the question, was the same point that can be used in terms of our Jewish brothers and sisters, where there was a time in history where there was a class of people that drew a circle around themselves, the Germans, the SS, and said that we can oppress our Jewish brothers and sisters, that we can treat them with abuse, we can kill them. So my point, Representative, was that we had this problem in history many times over, where a class of human beings says to another class of human beings, we can oppress you, we can kill you, we can murder you. And what we're saying with this bill is that every human being is made in God's image and deserves to be equally protected.
Sure.
Everyone, women, men, children.
I understand that, but Judaism does not posit that life begins at fertilization. It says that it's like water until 40 days. And the way you know that
Until 40 days. 40 days. That's 6 weeks. 6 weeks. 6 weeks. We're generally talking about 12-week rules here.
this is look at Israel. Abortion is readily available and it's free. So please don't
Abortion is not readily available in Israel. Thank God.
misstate what my religion tells me is my duty. If I am at risk, if my life is at risk, it might not only be suggested of me to have an abortion, but required of me to have an abortion.
She's true. This is right.
And because a life in being, my life takes priority over something that is not.
Right. We are not pro-choice.
Has not been born yet. So how do I exercise my religious liberty under your bill if it was adopted?
Well, this particular answer, thank you for the question, Representative, but the answer to two of those main questions, the first one is that when I was
Yeah, that's not even 2 missed periods. Correct, Jan God.
referring to Judaism, the Jewish religion is based upon the Old Testament scriptures, the law and the prophets.
I am well aware.
There's
Yes.
no question that the view that came later you're describing is not in the law and the prophets.
That's not
tradition. That's what I
true.
want to make to that. The next point is that this particular bill says nothing towards the case that you're bringing up where your life is in danger. This bill is about equal protection for all human beings in the womb. It's about the preservation of life. If your life were in danger because of a pregnancy in very rare instances, very infinitesimally
I'm not just talking about physically, emotionally, psychologically. Those are exceptions to which allow a Jewish woman to have an abortion if they need one.
if I may respond.
She is right. Emotionally, but your life has to be in danger, right? There actually has to be an actual danger to your life.
That's a very good point. We wouldn't, in our current justice system, allow a woman who murders her 6-year-old child by drowning him in the bathtub to get away with the argument, I was emotionally struggling, I didn't feel like I could care for this baby.
Yeah, actually, we would. That person would be not guilty by reason of insanity. Insanity is a plea.
It's not the same thing. I'm talking about things, an unborn child compared to let me finish my question, please. An unborn child versus a life in being, which would be the mother.
So
under your bill, could I exercise my religious liberty if I felt, along in consultation with my rabbi, that I needed an abortion, and my doctor, that I needed an abortion for survival, whether that's physical survival or mental survival?
and the point I was making to you is that the human being in the womb.
This is something you can answer with a yes or no.
I'm
Under my
trying.
hypothetical, and
I really don't like this in terms of religious liberty.
in your bill, could I exercise my religious liberty?
We don't believe that anybody has the right to, with malice of forethought, take the life of another human being in an unjustified manner. So equal protection for all humans means that nobody can say to another human being, I'm going to take your life with malice of forethought in an unjustified manner.
Okay, so your answer is no. I can't. If I believe that
You can't kill your baby, no.
Okay.
Okay, you can't kill your baby. No. Now, I'm somewhat distracted there trying to move this out of the way. How would put yourself in Jeff's shoes there for just a second before we get to the critique. Sitting in a place like that with people from all sorts of different worldviews throwing questions at you and trying to be consistent, praying that the Spirit of God will use that consistent testimony of the gospel to change hearts and minds. And by the way, my understanding is, and I could be wrong about some of this, but I heard in some situation, it might be this bill in Georgia. I'm not 100% certain, but it was someone who had watched Jeff's testimony in Colorado from last year or the year before. I forget which one it was, but they were so convicted by his testimony as they saw it. They're in a completely different state, but they were so convicted that they went to their representative and they brought this bill, whether it was this one in Georgia or no, I don't remember what the context was. But Colorado laughed Jeff off, and you might go, well, I don't think I'll ever do that again. I mean, you do all this traveling, all this preparation, you get mocked, you get attacked, and why would I even bother doing that again? Well, because you never know. God can use anything I mean, I can't tell you how many times out at the Easter
Take
pageant in
this
Mesa,
argument
General Conference, Salt Lake
of-
City,
You
witnessing.
never know. Like, do you not actually look at the fruits of your labor? Like, yeah, look at the fruits of your labor. Was that worth your time? Was that worth your what you did? And if it's not, then you should change it.
To Mormons, and the whole group of people you're talking to just walks away. It'd be real easy to just stop right there and go, we're wasting our time. And yet what we discover is that there was somebody listening, maybe in the group, maybe over there, weren't even letting them know that you were listening, and they heard. And years later, that seed was planted, germinated, came to life under the sovereign work of the Spirit. So you never know. And that's why you keep testifying. You keep speaking. And so here's the situation, and there's all these people coming from all these different directions. And he just...
If nobody watched my channel, I would not continue to do what I do. If people did not find it helpful, I would not continue to do what I do. This is called actually looking at the fruits of, by their fruits you shall know them. Like, what is he even saying?
Stays focused. Now, what he did, and he misspoke once. He said Talmud. He was thinking. I haven't asked him, but because I left by the time he got back.
No, actually, not guilty by reason of insanity is, well, kind of crazy talk, but it's not really crazy talk. There's a bunch of you watching, but you're not jumping on.
But I haven't asked him. But my gut feeling is he was thinking of Tanakh, and Talmud came out instead. But then he corrected that. Tanakh, Torah, Nevi'im, Ketuvim, a short way of referring to what we call the Old Covenant or Old Testament scriptures, Hebrew scriptures. And what he's doing is he is saying your foundation, allegedly, is in divine revelation. Now, look, you need to understand something. This woman is not a Talmudic Jew. Okay, she doesn't. She's not Orthodox. Probably doesn't even go to synagogue very often. This kind of Judaism is cultural. It's very liberal.
It's reform, named after the magisterial Reformation.
They're not concerned about stuff like that. This kind of Judaism pulls, as all leftist liberals do, whatever they want out of, it's like how they treat the Constitution. I like this, I don't like that, I like this. So you can look at the Talmud, you can look at all the commentaries that have come after the Talmud, and you can find something here, find something there, and they just sort of, stick it all together and come up with whatever they want. Very, very, very common in especially American Judaism, and hence just this massively wide spectrum of beliefs. And that's why it's next to impossible to even talk about Judaism teaches. What Judaism? When? In what context?
Orthodox.
We talk about Tannaitic Judaism. We talk about Second Temple Judaism.
Orthodox.
Well, obviously, Second Temple Judaism would be fundamentally different than even the Judaism that formulated the Talmud.
Nope.
Centuries have passed. Jerusalem's fallen.
False.
Things have changed.
False.
But there's even been much more evolution in the past 1,000 years than there was even at that point in time. So that's why when Judaism teaches us, and Judaism, what do you mean? That's like saying Christianity does, and then you start talking about the Mormons. You start talking about Jehovah's Witnesses, or you can even talk about, well, Christianity teaches the Pope, and the Orthodox go, no, we don't. You've got to be much more specific in your utilization of terminology to really say anything meaningful at that point. So what Jeff is doing is he's saying, you've got this you claim to have this foundation, and he's like, this is a foundation that we are supposed to have in common. I believe that the 39 books, or if they count it as 22, Minor Prophets 1, etc. I believe 24. Those books are God-breathed, just as the apostles did, just as Jesus. They're God speaking. The Holy Spirit spoke through David saying, etc., etc. So if we look at that, not as he then said later when she pushed back, the later traditional developments, which are what? Contradictory to the foundation. They're contradictory to the inspired scriptures, right? We all still believe those 39 books are the inspired scriptures, right? Even though they're Jews wrote them, right? I'm sure there are some today that are getting ready to go full on Marcion and get rid of all that. But his point is, your position is self-refuting. It's inconsistent. It's incoherent. The traditions that you're appealing to are contradictory to the scriptures that you claim are foundational to everything else. And that's where the problem's coming from. And so he's reasoning presuppositionally. He's trying to demonstrate to her the incoherence and inconsistency in the argument she's making, because it's not, obviously it is in the form of a question. but it's not really a question. It is an argument, and a thought out one as well. And so it's the idea, well, you're going to restrict my religious liberty, as Jeff points out. Well, we already do. If you want to, sacrifice your 6-year-old, and this again demonstrates that the real argument here is, well, it's how old you are, it's where you are, it's position, it's development.
Who let you on my channel?
You did. What's James White blabbering about?
There was a hearing in Colorado about a law banning abortions, and there was a Jewish representative who was claiming as her religious liberty to have an abortion, and that's the argument they were having.
Blah, blah, blah.
Blah, blah, blah. What do you guys do with Exodus 21?
Oh, remind me Exodus 21 and what needs to be done about it.
Exodus 21, verse 22. I will not bother you with the Hebrew. If men strive and hurt a woman with child, so that her fruit depart from her, and yet no further harm ensue, he shall be surely punished according to the woman's husband will lay upon him, and he shall pay as the judges determine. But if any harm ensue, then thou shalt give life for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot, burning for burning, wound for wound, bruise for bruise. And it is based on this verse that Orthodox Judaism says you cannot equate the life of a mother with that of the unborn child.
Because basically you're saying there's a financial punishment to be determined by the judge if only the unborn child was harmed, but there is the full weight if the mother was harmed.
Well, I mean, we understand life for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth to be financial as well. This is for an unintentional death. So the whole thing is financial, but there's it distinguishes between the miscarriage and the mother dying.
Mm-hmm. And doesn't seemingly give the miscarriage the full weight.
Yeah, it distinguishes between there are Christian ways of reading those verses differently than how we read them, but I'm not sure all Christians know how to read them that way. I'm not sure all Christians do read them that way, but I know the committees like translating them in weird ways.
Imagine that, committees enjoying weird translation practices.
Yes, it's very interesting to me. I didn't notice it until I got to really looking at Christian translations, that Christian translations go with committees, because when you have a committee, you can always find a majority that's still Trinitarian.
Yeah.
But if you go with an individual translator, no individual person can believe all the gymnastics it takes to have a Trinitarian Bible.
Right. Only a committee can be that absurd sometimes. Yeah. And I generally enjoy translations done by individuals better, because you can have sort of a sense of consistency about certain kinds of choices that one has to make. And like the King James had a committee, but it was also like 80% William Tyndale, and which is why a lot of it has a certain sort of coherence and unique artistic quality to it.
But they use the Rabbinic Bible, and it's very clear, especially in their naming of their stones, that they did use the Rabbinic.
I mean, abortion. Like you're making me talk publicly on the internet about abortion.
And you're an elected official.
I am an elected official. Although I was not up for election tonight, but half of my board members were up for election tonight or today.
How'd the election go?
The election in my town, the school board was actually uncontested. There was 3 people running for 3 spots, but our mayoral election was quite contentious. Like everyone in my suburb had signs in their front yards for one or the other mayor candidate, and my favored candidate won 53-47. So I'm feeling good for that.
Hold on.
tonight.
If the school board's uncontested with you on it, that means there's a lot of conservative school board members.
Well, I mean, I didn't run out and out as a conservative. The way that my town works, you cannot run in Illinois at least. School boards are nonpartisan positions,
Here
and
too.
so you literally cannot run as a Republican or a Democrat. It doesn't mean you couldn't make your partisan opinions or leanings felt, but you don't run affiliated with a party. And my town also has a caucus, which is a volunteer board of people who make a recommended slate of candidates and then offer them a little bit of financial support for campaigning and stuff like that. And so I applied to be on the caucus ticket and was slated, as they call it, by the caucus back 2 years ago. And it's rare in my town that school board members run against the caucus's slate, but it does happen from time to time. But it didn't happen 2 years ago. nor
And
did
the
it happen
caucus
today.
is very conservative.
No, the caucus tries to have a mix. I actually somewhat admire them in the sense that they try to intentionally have a mix of different viewpoints and different ages and different, aspects of the community, and not just like fake diversity, but like actual diversity of the kind that sort of matters.
Yeah, but I don't want somebody on my school board who has a diversity of opinions on whether kids should be socially transitioned.
Well, fair enough. But I don't know. I mean, school board, I have to tell you, like 90% of the time, school board is like incredibly boring, and you're voting on whether to renew a bus contract or go out to bid for a new bid on your bus contract. That's like the level of excitement that it is the vast majority of the time.
Yeah, I have seen the exact amount of corruption involved with school boards, and it's all financial corruption. You are absolutely correct.
I would like to think that our school board is very unfinancially corrupt. I'm just saying the vast majority of decisions you make are of a completely boring and mundane quality.
And I am saying, I think the various school bus companies, etc., have a lot to do with how that caucus functions.
Oh, I don't think that that's true at all.
You are so naive.
I'm not naive. You need to come like, but my suburb doesn't work that way. The problem just is that when it comes to bus contracts, the problem is that there just aren't very many bus companies, and it's
yes,
hard.
I know. Why do you think that is?
Because there's a labor shortage of good bus drivers.
Bullshit. If okay, so you're like down my alley. Like I was getting a master's of public administration. If you wanted, if you wanted to do it well, what you would do is always require at least 2 different bus companies, and you would create a platform for independent bus companies to take up, and you would have one small group of buses run by the school district to just in case necessary, and that would bring down the costs so much.
So the problem is that we're a really small school district who doesn't even like totally need a full bus. And so like even buying our own bus would be more money than we spend on contracts. Like this is the only time we use buses is like sending our basketball team to away games and stuff like that. We actually don't use buses to pick up and drop off daily because we're small enough that we don't even need
Okay.
that.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. That's not a large enough contract to
Right.
create too much problems.
And it's not a large enough contract to even like foster an interest in corruption. It would be a waste of time for anyone to be, trying to corrupt the political process for the size of this contract. Uh, so
Okay.
I'm
Okay.
just saying my
yeah.
main point is it's mostly boring. But I mean, I do think that schools are in for some sort of wild ride in the next 5 or 10 years.
Yeah.
And I think that it's kind of mainly two things. It is social issues will be a big thing. Well, maybe three things I'll say. Social issues.
What's the dropout rate?
Of my elementary K through 8 district, 0, because you can't drop out before you're 16. I'm in a K through 8 district.
You guys have K through 8 districts?
Illinois has tons of different schools. Like what Illinois mostly does things poorly, but it does do some things well. And one thing it does well is that it has tons of school boards and tons of tiny districts so that there's a lot of local control. Like some states have school boards at the level of a county, right?
Okay,
And-
so
And
I
Cook,
have
like,
to
Cook
say,
County is 5 or 6 million people. Cook County is an enormous.
Illinois
anyway.
is the king of government corruption, and
Yes.
lots of small school boards makes for very good government corruption.
Sometimes yes, and sometimes no. In some ways, it makes it harder because there's too many things that you have to worry about, and it depends on how well run your suburb is and how put together it is. Like I would be honestly, I would be in favor of the whole rest of the country have tiny school districts and tiny hyper local control. And the school boards are like these are volunteer positions, Jacob. Like literally none of us are doing this for any money. We're all parents who are either stay-at-home moms or have jobs who are way more important than this and are doing it because we care about the school.
I get it, but that's a very good way of setting things up. Like you have to realize, like I am 100% sure there is all kinds of money being wasted.
That is probably true. But wasted or spent.
How much money do you spend per
extravagantly.
student?
We are among the highest in the state.
Exactly. And how many students?
My total school district has something like 500 students.
500 students, what? At least 10,000 per student? More? 20,000 per student? 30,000 per student? 25,000 per student? Okay, so 500 students, 2,500 per student. You're the statistician. How much is that?
Is that 1.25 million a year or something like that?
$1.25 million a year. Do you know how much graft you could get out of that?
Well, yeah, I mean, like the vast majority of it is like 60-70% of it is teacher salaries and benefits.
Right, because do you know how much capital you guys have in real estate?
Yes, I do. But I mean,
incredible amounts.
I mean, a lot of the corruption or a lot of the graft, like the biggest crime, financial, educational crime in Illinois, is that the local school districts pay for the school teachers' salaries, but not their retirement. And so the way that we attract teachers, from other districts or be more competitive is that we play all sorts of games that will juice their retirement package once they retire because it's not financially on us.
Right. But also the amount of, I mean, just the waste in the real estate usage is insane.
I don't know what you mean in waste and real estate usage. We barely own any more land than our schools can fit on.
Okay, but your schools, 3 months out of the year, they're pretty much not being used.
Well, yeah, but like, I mean, there's still some stuff that goes on in the summer, but that's always been the case. All schools are.
I mean, the thing is, the rent from those schools, like,
But who would want, like, I mean, besides a couple like Park District summer school activities, which already happen, like, who's going to want to use the
lots of
buildings?
first of all, lots of summer school activities. We could be having a conference there.
I mean, I guess, but I mean, part of these things, but then you have to have a building manager and, you know, all sorts of things. It's like not free either to like, you know,
If
not
it
just have
was
them locked up.
privately owned, that
If
real
it was
estate
privately owned, it
would
would be
be-
being used for something.
yes.
But I mean, our elementary school is too small. Like this is something I mentioned to Malcolm Collins, as I was like, you know, my enrollment at my elementary school is growing, and it is at almost previously unheard of records since the last time our elementary school was this big was in the mid 60s during the peak of the baby boomers.
Wow.
And it's not because my suburb has like new housing divisions or something. It's been built out, like all the land, you know, I live pretty close to the city. My
I've been
suburb's
to your
built
house.
out. You've been to my house. And so, I mean, there's some sort of fertility bump or something happening now.
God has blessed you with fruits of the womb.
I know. And so I'm wondering, like, okay, so the birth rate isn't falling everywhere. Our birth rate here must be doing pretty well. So what's going on? And so our elementary school is bursting at the seams. We need to add more space, and it's almost already I feel a little bit behind the 8 ball on that.
Are you guys gonna charter schools?
Well, so one of the other big curveballs, so the social issues, where I think just in general, teachers have gotten complacent to the point where they feel like parents just trust them to do whatever the teachers want. And then because of COVID and the internet and other sorts of things, parents are starting to not trust teachers with a blank check to say whatever they want to their students. And teachers aren't used to having the level of parental scrutiny that I think is coming their way soon.
And the schools of education are indoctrination centers.
And the schools of education are, yes, yes. And so that's change number one, is parental scrutiny, especially with regard to social curriculum, you know, those sorts of issues. Change number two is school choice stuff that could come. I think mostly that will come from the state level. I don't imagine that will actually come from the federal level.
It can't.
It can't, right? So but there will still be popular push for that. And some of the most strong support for that is urban minorities.
Oh yeah.
You know, right? So it's a real bind for the Democratic Party because the teachers union hates it. And obviously the teachers union is a huge Democratic Party supporter, but ethnic minorities love school choice. And so that puts the Democratic Party in a real bind and opens up an obvious opportunity for the Republicans to try and steal more of that support. And so I do feel like school choice is a big curveball that could be coming down the road for public schools. And in some states already has happened. And then the third one is AI/online education in general. And, you know, what happens, I feel like homeschooling has a lot of momentum. Previously, it was for weird religious types or weird hippie types. And then during COVID, it got a lot more popular just for practical reasons. And it's only picking up steam as schools become more controversial. But it's also picking up steam because I think technological tools are making it easier to educate your kids at or better than the level of your local public school without it needing as much time or attention or skill as it used to.
Okay.
And so I think all three of those things.
I am going to change the topic of discussion to the Council of Nicaea.
Great. What about it?
Did you watch PVK's video today?
Yes, I did watch PVK's video today about dating, and yeah, I mean, if you're going to tell me that Constantine is an anti-Semite who intentionally changed the date of Easter away from the 14th of Nisan because he didn't think that the Christians should be following the Jews, then yes, you're right.
And so my comment was, eventually Nicaea will be undone, and the Christians will turn back toward God and Israel. Exodus 12:2, precisely as the Talmud explains. And
Right. Well,
I
you
haven't
say-
even read this comment that Paul Vanderklay pinned about the Council of Nicaea 325 addressing Easter.
Yeah. Yeah. I recorded a video with Vanderklay and Elizabeth Oldfield this morning. I believe it's already on Paul's No Ads members only section. It'll come out on my section tomorrow, or in my channel publicly tomorrow morning. We talked briefly about councils, but not as much as I could have wanted to. But you sometimes you say, well, at some point, Protestants, the protest needs to end. As once the Council of Nicaea is overturned, then I feel like the protest might be about ready to end.
Okay, I'm all for overturning the Council of Nicaea.
Yeah. But I mean, it's absolutely true. I mean, I think that, I mean, we have the words of Constantine's speech on changing, or I mean, he didn't change it. There was already a dispute within the Christian community over whether to do it on the 14th of Nisan or whether to do it on a Sunday as calculated by the church. And so he didn't make up a new position. He was
But
siding
both
with,
of those were on the Jewish calendar, weren't they?
I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah,
And-
and they decided to move away from the Jewish calendar
Right.
because they were anti-Semites.
Right, and this wasn't secret at all. It's like not like we're imputing motivations to them. Like there's a whole speech by Constantine where he says it's embarrassing for the church to follow the leadership of the detestable Jews. and
It
stuff
is.
like that. Right, and so we need to strike out on our own and trust in our own authority and not be following them around anymore. Like honestly, one thing that I find kind of confusing about Constantine. Like Constantine in general was pretty religiously tolerant. And even his Christianity and paganism, he was kind of a syncretist between his Christianity and his paganism.
Right.
Like even in Constantinople, long after, like years after the Council of Nicaea, when it comes time to build a statue in the main public square of Constantinople, which a lot of Orthodox Christians hail as like the first real Christian city without any idols and stuff in it. Okay, what statue's in the middle of the city of Constantinople? It's Constantine portrayed as the sun god Apollo. It's like, so he would jump back and forth between pagan iconography and Christian symbolism. And
They call him Apostolos, equal to the apostles.
Eusebius went further than that and called him greater than the apostles and equal almost even to Christ.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, that's in the Orations of Constantine, which was, presumably something read out loud to Constantine. But Constantine loved monotheism, right? He thought monotheism was, the bee's knees, and that pagan monotheism and Christian monotheism were essentially mutually compatible, because if you believe there's only one God, then you're kind of already in agreement about the nature of God. And he believed that, like, once upon a time, all humans were monotheist, but then sort of in like a Tower of Babel-esque way, we all had our own languages and different names for gods. And then we got the impression accidentally that there are actually multiple gods, but this was a confusion. And if we restore the original monotheism of humankind, then all will be well and good. And so it's like, okay, so Constantine loves monotheism, but yet he somehow hates the Jews. And it's like, that's sort of, a weird combination. One might think that, the people group that was more responsible than any other for the maintenance and the spread and the source of monotheism would get more credit in his mind. but for some reason it doesn't.
The Romans really didn't understand these crazy religious fanatics called Jews.
Well, I mean, I feel like actually they understood you Jews quite well, and that they were constantly trying to figure out a political situation in which you would be happy for long enough, but yet they got to politically control you, and they tried about every combination in the book.
All I can say is, and I actually, so Rabbi Mullet had a thing today on. He started with Genesis 1:1, and for me it was just so fitting that he decided to talk about Genesis 1:1 because Rashi there mentions that like the so the in the I think it's in the Talmud, no, it's in the Midrash, it says that the Bible should have started with this month shall be the first of months about Nisan. Because it's the first commandment given to the Jewish people by Moses.
Mhm.
And like, it just seems to me this whole fight over Nicaea is the most clear, like over the calendar is the most clear indication. Did you know the Quran specifically outlaws intercalation of months? Do you even
Interesting.
know what an intercalation of months is?
Is that like when things have gotten so out of whack that it's almost like a leap month to sort of get the months back on track to being in the right season or something like that?
Yeah, so the Jewish calendar has 7 leap months every 19 years.
Hmm.
And the Quran specifically bans adding months, which is why the
Which is why
Muslim-
Ramadan is constantly changing what season it falls in.
and their year is 354 days a year.
Yeah, and which gets them increasingly off track over time. Yeah.
Yeah, well, so it's very, very difficult to translate years from like if you do
Dates,
100 years ago.
Islamic dates are hard to translate to back to
Yeah. You have to basically have a computer do it, but like it's all coming together, Sam.
What's it coming together towards, Jacob?
Like Muslims and Christians recognizing that HaChodesh Hazeh Yeh Lachem Rosh Chodashim. This month shall be to you the beginning of the months.
Yeah. I mean, Paul brings up a very good point that let's say the Pope changed the calculation of the date of Easter.
Right.
Would the Protestants follow? And it's a question
Of course
that
they
the
will.
Protestants it's a question that the Protestants have never had to answer because the Roman Catholics haven't changed their date calculations since the Reformation. So Protestants have basically been on synchronized autopilot next to the Catholics, right? And none of us had to update our calendars. And so we've just been in happy parallel together ever since. And so then as the Roman Catholics change, do the Protestants change with it? And then that's sort of like Constantine's point, but in reverse. Are then the Protestants giving some sort of tacit authority to the Pope via that decision-making
Yes.
power? Yeah.
Yes. That's that. Okay. So do you know what the witnesses do? The JWs?
Do they do 14th of Nisan?
They do the 14th of the month.
Of March or something? They do 14th of
No,
March?
no. They do 14th of the lunar month, but they choose the lunar month that the Christian Easter, according to the Catholic churches.
So it's a Jewish calculation of days of the month, but a Christian calculation of which month to use, and it may or may not be Nisan.
Correct. So sometimes it falls on Purim.
Yeah. Huh.
Last year it fell on Purim.
That's a little goofy. I do know a couple other groups. I do know some Christian groups. They're often the sort of messianic Torah keeping type that will
Yes.
do 14th of Nisan still. But even then, when they do it, I'm not even quite sure if they're actually celebrating Easter or if they're still just doing like some sort of
Passover.
vaguely messianized Passover, but it's still actually
Yeah.
more a focus on
Kind
Passover.
of. So Nehemiah Gordon, right? Have you heard of him?
I know who you're talking. Yeah. I
Oh
know who you-
God. He's one of the few people I've made a video specifically debunking him. He so because he's a Karaite and he doesn't want to do things the Pharisee way, so he actually has set up his own thing where he declares what month is Nisan. Based on the barley harvest in Jerusalem.
Yeah, based on the barley harvest. I mean, well, it's a whole question that Protestants have almost never really had to grapple with, is what sort of authority does it take to do something like that? And where does that authority come from? And what would justify you to have the authority to make that for yourself?
So the
And-
governing body of the JWs
Yeah. Well, they
says
think that they were chosen by
No,
Jesus
no,
Christ
no.
when he visited invisibly back in 1917 or whatever.
Yes, but they use the month that the majority of Christians have Easter on.
So they're still
Because
anchored in some sense to Rome.
They because they think that the Christian community as a whole gets to decide when Easter is.
Yeah, but then it boils down to one person anyway, because the
And
majority of Christians
who are
Catholics
Christians and who are not Christians because they don't believe.
because they
that-
also don't think that they're actually Christians.
Yes,
Right.
it's so funny.
So they have a double standard. Yeah, that's weird. That's weird.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, we got a Paul Vanderklay. Yes, Paul, just like the Talmud says, HaChodesh hazeh yeh lachem Rosh Chodeshim. Like it really, like I was always wondering, like, why are the rabbis, there's two things that you're not allowed to teach a Gentile. One of them is how to calculate the months. And the other is the secret of creation.
What's that? What's the secret of creation?
Well, how would I know?
That's funny. Oh.
You think I'm going to teach you the secret of creation on live stream of all
Oh,
places?
I was just asking, just out of curiosity. But I mean, I do think that this is going to be a very interesting thing. I'll make a video about Nicaea sometime this year, probably in the next month or two. That I mean, I already have a couple. Hank and I already did our episodes about Nicaea.
Are you actually going to do Servetus anytime soon?
I'm going to. I've gotten delayed per usual, but I do. I have been reading him and slowly making notes, but it'll probably be sometime like this fall that this finally gets going. But I will do Servetus. That needs to be done, and I honestly quite enjoy it. And expect it to set viewership records or subscription milestones for my channel.
The
but
Holy
it's worthwhile.
Martyr. The Holy
Holy
Martyr.
I know that you're doing that just to bug Paul a little bit, but I mean, I do genuinely believe that he was probably the greatest Protestant era theologian, and that his works have been
Whose video about DBH? Your videos?
I assume he means my video about DBH. Paul did comment on my David Bentley Hart. But I mean, I've made 5 videos about David Bentley Hart, Paul. He just listened to my short one. But I do think that David Bentley Hart is a very interesting theologian, and that he is. I think that too many theologians, especially of the conservative bent, basically view theology as something like an archaeology project, where all you can do is go into the past and try and find something and say what it was. And I do think that theology is a subject that needs to be in some sense active and meeting the intellectual world of the present, and that we are still in some sense always learning about God, and so that theology is not a dead subject. obviously I have a very restorationist bent in my theology, so I have a fair amount of sympathy for the restorationist, archaeological form of theology. But theology is living and active and needs to keep going. And I do feel like David Bentley Hart is an interesting person who is still doing philosophy and theology, still trying to say new and old things at the same time, even if I think a lot of what he says is not correct. But it's still way more interesting than he's wrongly interesting as opposed to boringly correct.
Do you know Keith Foskey?
No.
You're a Calvinist? I'm having
My-
him on my channel on April 15th.
Oh, I was going to say, I didn't think I had a Calvinist. All right, my Calvinist, Keith Foskey.
Yeah, he's coming on my channel.
Oh,
I remembered him because he has I forget what I think this there was a he does a lot of funny videos. His videos are actually kind of funny, but one of his videos is arguing with a Calvinist, and he ends it with well Michael Servetus, and that was the end of it.
Yeah.
But I don't remember which video it was.
I'm talking with Tobias Singer this weekend.
With who?
Tobias Singer.
Tovia Singer.
Tovia Singer. Sorry, Tovia Singer.
Rabbi Tovia Singer.
Rabbi Tovia Singer this
Yes.
weekend. So what should I mean, I think that
Former chief rabbi of is it
former
Malaysia or
chief rabbi
Indonesia?
of Indonesia and all of the Southeast Pacific Islands or something like
Well,
that.
no, there are plenty of rabbis in Australia. There aren't there are rabbis in China, there are rabbis in Australia, there are rabbis in Japan. He was the only rabbi in Malaysia or Indonesia or whatever it was, and he called himself the chief rabbi, which
I think that's a little bit funny. But so, I mean, I was thinking of having my episode be relatively simple. Like, he doesn't know me very well, doesn't know much about me. And so I was thinking of just playing sort of Trinitarian's advocate and just sort of asking him common Trinitarian arguments about the Old Testament and having him, swat them down and something like that.
he's a great Baptist preacher. He's really good at being, yeah. Sam's having the thing with Tovia Singer is like the only people who know him are Christians. Like in the Jewish community, there's very few people who have ever heard of him.
Right. And I mean, his game is interesting. Like I think I told you privately that he reminds me of, say, Jake Bracatella or Shabir Ali, who are Muslims that specialize in counter-Christian apologetics, right? But probably don't have nearly as much influence on their own communities, but are mostly known by their interaction or interface with Christianity.
Well, I'm not sure you can say that about Shabir Ali. Shabir Ali is
Fair enough.
I mean, he's pretty fringe as far as as far as Islam goes. But I would say he's actually more representative of your common Muslims, certainly in South Asia, than most internet Muslims.
Okay, so Jonathan, what do you think I should talk to Tovia Singer about? I mean, I was thinking of mainly letting him do his greatest hits.
Yeah, he has his greatest hits. He's the one who where I got the New Testament is filled with new and wonderful things. The problem is the new things aren't wonderful and the wonderful things aren't new.
Yeah. I mean, he's a big deal for my audience because, as you can imagine, a lot of the Christians interested in Judaism are not as big on the Trinity as your average Christian, and there is a decent amount of counter apologetics for biblical Unitarians to Judaize, basically.
Actually, you could ask him about Nicaea. and
Yeah.
the Jewish
Well,
calendar.
I could ask him about that. I mean, it's funny. I've heard him give his usual spiel about the, I don't know, kind of the history of development of the doctrine of the Trinity.
Mm.
And it's sort of like kind of mediocre. And I would point, it's not, I think it's wrong in many ways. I know where he's getting it from.
Oh, you talking to him about PSA? That would be interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it would be, because, so, I mean, I could, So,
He
like, how do
hammers
I
on
even-
PSA like you wouldn't believe.
how do I talk about Christology with him though? Like, I can ask him questions like, well, what do you think the Messiah is like in terms of his humanity and relationship to God? But I don't want to be, I mean, I'm a low status interviewer in his eyes. And so I don't want to be inserting a lot of my own opinions or talking about my
You know
own
what you could
thoughts
ask him
on it.
about is about Jesus saying, yes, prostate specific antigen, exactly, Paul. You could ask him about Jesus in the Gospel of John saying, I have said you are the children of the Most High.
Yeah. You mean it, like where he says, "You are God, sons of the Most
Yeah.
High." Yeah.
Mhm.
And what he thinks is going on there.
Well, and what he thinks the initial verse says, because that actually is for him, like, so he comes from the Litvish side, and
Mhm.
although I mean he used to hang around with Chabad enough, but he from the more Lithuanian side of Orthodox Judaism, they're a lot more reticent at the idea that human beings represent God in the world than the Hasidic world.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I don't know. I'm not sure exactly what he would say. And if you're not aware of, and this is the
Some of
thing,
those subtleties, yeah.
yeah, and this is the thing with Tovia Singer, like if he doesn't like where things are going, he'll just ignore you. Like he
Yeah.
he made most of his name by debating with Michael Brown back in the day.
Yeah.
He refuses to talk to Michael Brown anymore.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, I get the impression that he relies on the fact that a certain kind of very biblicist, especially dispensationalist sort of Christian, is sort of inherently taught to trust Jews more on the Bible than they are
Yeah.
about Christians, right? And that he uses the sort of "I'm Jewish, I get to tell you what it means" trick a lot.
Yeah.
That some Christians are don't have any antibodies for. And I sort of get the impression that because I know that you Jews aren't really supposed to evangelize, and that he's sort of a counter evangelist, and I sometimes get the feeling like his main impetus or goal is like, hey, all you Protestant evangelicals are trying to evangelize conservative Jewish communities. Here's a taste of your own medicine, or something like
That's
that.
very much where he started. I mean, have you heard his story about when he was a kid?
No.
So apparently, as a young man, he was, and you have to realize when he was young, the Holocaust was very bright in Jewish memory.
And I have heard that he said his family moved from Hungary to Pennsylvania in like the 1930s,
Yeah, exactly.
and that he feels like barely dodged the Holocaust and stuff.
And so as a young man in yeshiva in high school, he apparently was confronted with Jews for Jesus saying to be a a full Jew, to be a completed Jew, you have to become a Christian. And this, so one of my biggest disagreements, not that, I mean, look, I wouldn't be able to disagree like this with Tovia Singer. He's an Orthodox rabbi. He's a nice guy. He's better than I am, right? But the rabbis I respect would not be as anti-Jesus as he is, or at least as he allows his community to be. And his Noahide community is very, very anti-Christianity.
Yeah, I get that impression. So here's a question for you that I might ask for him is, I mean, Jews believe that souls pre-exist in some sense before their embodiment.
Correct.
What's the soul of the Messiah doing right now?
Well, I mean, the Talmud says it's outside the gates of Rome.
The soul of the Messiah is outside the gates of Rome?
The Messiah is waiting outside the gates of Rome.
To do what?
Waiting for us to repent.
Why is he outside the gates of Rome?
That's what the Talmud says.
Of what? Why isn't he outside the gates of Jerusalem or something? Why Rome?
Well, at the time this particular saying came to be, Jerusalem was rubble, first of all. Second, yeah, there's this whole question of Edom, right? And but here I can, Chazi, do you remember where that is? It in Ketubot? Where is that Talmud? Well, let me see if I can Google it. Gates of Rome. Sanhedrin 98a. Sanhedrin 98a. Oops. Shoot. Clicked the wrong thing. Okay, so Talmud, Sanhedrin 98a. I guess this is as good as a place as any to start. Rabbi Eliezer said to him, "But isn't it already stated, if you will return Israel, says the Lord, return to me," indicating that redemption is contingent upon repentance? Rabbi Yehoshua said to him, "But isn't it already stated, and I heard the man clothed in linen, who was above the waters of the river, when he lifted up his right hand and his left hand to heaven, and swore by the one who lives forever," this is Daniel 12:7, "that it shall be for a periods and a half, when the crushing of the power of the holy people shall have been completed, all these things shall be finished," indicating that the time for redemption is set and unrelated to repentance. And Rabbi Eliezer was silent, unable to refute the proof from that verse. And Rabbi Abba said, "You have no more explicit manifestation of the end of days than this following phenomenon, as it is stated, 'But you, mountains of Israel, you shall give your branches and yield your fruit to my people of Israel, for they will soon be coming. When produce will grow in abundance in the land of Israel, it is an indication that the Messiah will be coming soon.'" Rabbi Eliezer says, "You have no greater manifestation of the end of days than this following phenomenon as well, as it is stated, for before these days there was no hire for man, nor any hire for beast, nor was there peace from the oppressor, to whom to him who exits and to him who enters. Zechariah 8:10. When there are no wages for work and no rent paid for use of one's animal, that is an indication that the coming of the Messiah. The Talmud asks, what is the meaning of the phrase, nor was there peace from the oppressor to him who exits and to him who enters? Rav says, it means that even for Torah scholars, with regard to whom the promise of peace is written, as it is written, great peace have they who love your Torah, and there is no obstacle for them. Psalms 119. There will be no peace from the oppressor, and Shmuel says it means that the Messiah will not come until all the prices are equal. Rabbi Hanina says the son of David will not come until a fish will be sought for an ill person and will not be found, as it is stated with regard to the downfall of Egypt. Then I will make their waters clear and cause their rivers to run like oil, meaning that the current in the rivers will come to a virtual standstill. And it is written thereafter, on the day I will cause the glory of the house of Israel to flourish. Where is the
Yeah, I'm struggling to see what this has
Rome
to do with
thing.
the Messiah.
Let
Just
me see if
Control
I
F
can
Rome.
find Rome.
Yeah, Control F Rome.
There we go. Okay. Rabbi Chama Bar Hanina says the son of David will not come until the contemptuous kingdom of Rome will cease from the Jewish people, as it is stated, and he shall sever the sprigs, hazalzalim, with pruning hooks. And it is written thereafter, at that time shall a present be brought to the Lord of hosts by a people scattered and hairless. Zeri says that Rabbi Hanina says, the son of David will not come until the arrogant will cease to exist from among the Jewish people. So I guess not in my generation. As it is stated, for then I will remove from your midst your proudly exalting ones. And it is written afterward, and I will leave in your midst a poor and lowly people, and they shall take refuge in the name of the Lord.
All right. So, Jacob, when
Yeah.
souls come into bodies, do they get some sort of memory wipe?
Yes.
Yeah,
Well, no,
then-
actually, it's right before they're born that the memory wipe happens.
and then we can slowly recall perhaps information, and that, you know, it's sort of learning is remembering and that sort of thing.
Kind of, yeah. I mean, as our dear friend John Vervaeke likes to ask, if you're looking for something, how do you know when you found it?
Yeah, good question. It's sort of like the Meno paradox, and which is specifically one of Plato's arguments for the preexistence of souls, is that we somehow, you know, if we are able to grow towards something, you have to kind of have some deposit of that in you already, or else you can't become more like something else.
I found what I was looking for.
All right, go for it.
Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi said to Elijah, when will the Messiah come? Elijah said to him, go ask him. Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi asked, and where is he sitting? Elijah said to him, at the entrance of the city of Rome. Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi asked him, and what is his identifying sign by means of which I can recognize him? Elijah answered, he sits among the poor who suffer from illnesses, and all of them untie their bandages and tie them all at once. But the Messiah unties one bandage and ties one at a time. He says, perhaps I will be needed to serve to bring about the redemption. Therefore, I will never tie more than one bandage so that I will not be delayed.
All right. So, do you know how and when Constantine had his revelation of Jesus?
No idea.
Constantine didn't become emperor until 324 AD, but he became, so back then there was like the tetrarchy, right? There was the Western emperor and the Western Caesar. Caesar meant something like vice president, basically. And then there was the Eastern emperor and the Eastern Caesar.
Yes.
And so Constantine was the Western Caesar. His dad had been the Western Caesar prior to that. And then often what would happen is this tetrarchy, once an emperor died, would turn into a Hunger Games situation where it would basically be a four-way civil war, and then the winner would then get to be emperor and then build a new tetrarchy. And so Constantine was then thrown into the Hunger Games. And so he was fighting the Augustus of the West. And the Augustus of the West was in Rome. And so Constantine was the underdog, right? He's outside the city, always harder to attack a city than defend a city. And this is this 312 AD? I think so. And so his troops are camping outside the gates of Rome, trying to figure out what their strategy is going to be to attack Rome and how Constantine's going to win this battle. And Constantine has a flash of light, and a voice says to him, in this sign, conquer. And the sign is Chi Rho, which, for the record, it's still a little bit unclear how that's supposed to be a Christian symbol. But there are multiple accounts of this vision. Some of them have Christian labeling and some of them have pagan labeling. Again, it's that same thing that I was talking about earlier, that Constantine would seemingly play both sides. So anyway, he makes all of his men draw crosses on their shields and write Chi Rho, or XR, basically, on their shields. And then they are outside the gates of Rome, and they are taunting the Augustus of the West to be a man and come out and fight. And he takes the bait, thinking that Constantine has a small army. And then that emperor falls into the river Tiber, and he either drowns or is easily killed from that position. And then Constantine romps his army and then becomes the uncontested ruler of the Western Empire. He then later, a decade later, has to go and defeat the Eastern side, but he becomes emperor of the West outside the gates of Rome after he saw a vision of this messianic figure in the sky.
So Jesus is the conquering military leader that Paul Vanderklay thought he was all the time.
Constantine is such an interesting figure.
He apparently murdered his own eldest son.
That's correct. He murdered multiple family members. I forget the entire list. When he conquered the East, the emperor and Caesar of the East surrendered to him on condition that he would spare their lives. Mm-hmm. Within the first year of him being sole emperor, they were both dead for mysterious reasons. He was a Roman emperor, right? He knew it. He lived by those rules. He killed family members. He killed enemies. He made false promises. He did all of those sorts of things to consolidate his power and rule out rival claims to the throne and all that sort of thing.
And he was equal to the apostles.
And greater than the apostles, Jacob. In the church where Constantine was entombed, there were 12 reliquaries, things that hold relics, that had relics from all 12 apostles, and they were on a lower level than his tomb, with the clear symbolism being that he himself, the apostles were looking to him, and that he was above them.
I mean, the guy basically was Jesus.
I still think that people struggle to understand how truly influential Constantine was, and that we almost haven't really come to terms with that or know how to make sense of that, because so many of the details are weird and uncomfortable.
I got into an argument online on Twitter about whether or not Constantine dominated Nicaea. And
he totally did.
Of course he did. And there are all these, including Grok was actually arguing with me because one of the Christians goes to Grok and Grok is like, well, I wouldn't say he dominated. He facilitated.
You have to remember, Grok and any other LLM are just regurgitating the majority data side in their training data.
exactly. Yeah. And like everybody who talks about what happened at Nicaea is pretty much Catholic.
Yeah, right. And so there's this embarrassment that it was very dominated by Constantine. But multiple of the bishops at the Council of Nicaea said that they only signed on to the creed out of fear of Constantine. And you can imagine why fear of Constantine was a real thing. Like, as I've said, everyone already knows that he's killed multiple people to get to where he is, both in battle and off the battlefield. And so you have all of these Christian bishops, many of whom who have survived the great persecution of Diocletian that was about 20 years prior to the Council of Nicaea, which was the most severe Roman persecution of Christianity. And so they've been terrified of the Roman Empire and emperors and all that sort of thing for a long time. And so all these Christian bishops show up, like they didn't wear fancy clothes like we associate bishops wearing now. They mostly wore humble sort of, habits and that sort of thing. Christianity still very much had an anti-flashiness to it and a suspicion of material wealth. And to be a bishop was basically to be an ascetic at that point in time. And so they would have worn humble robes. And then Constantine walks in the full royal purple on the first day of the council, right? Like he wears the flashiest emperor outfit that he has in his closet to the beginning of this council. So like, what do you think's going on? And yes, there was some political jostling, and it wasn't like the various bishops there had zero power. But I mean, he completely dominated the council.
Yeah, this is the huge. A guy ended up blocking me for saying that that Constantine. What was his final thing? He didn't call it. He did not. He did not open it with a speech. He did not argue for a position. His own views were rather Arian, in fact.
The council was rather Arian, in fact, by at least the modern definition of Arian. And Constantine did give a speech. He gave multiple speeches at the council, of which we still have the texts.
And he did open it. Like there's no question.
Open it. Yeah. And he closed it as best as we can tell. And that the word homoousios that was that's the consubstantial with the Father, that's like the most memorable and sort of controversial word in there. All of the historical evidence points in the direction that he himself introduced that word into the creed, and that many bishops were not fans of that word. And that the best historical explanation is that in his sort of pagan, Neoplatonic, monotheistic kind of mystery Gnosticism sort of upbringing, that we have strong historical documentation that they use that word homoousios to describe the relationship of an emanation from God to God, right? That was sort of like, the aeons that emanate out of God, or homoousios with the, pleroma of God, or, like that kind of language. And so Constantine would have grown up knowing that word in his religious upbringing, and Christianity already didn't like that word because it's Gnostic association and stuff like that. And so the best explanation for why that word's in the creed is that Constantine himself introduced it.
Jules says if Father Stephen wasn't playing Marvel Rivals, he would have hopped on. Have you seen all the videos Father Stephen has been uploading of himself playing Marvel Rivals?
No.
He's become a truly a great video game streamer, apparently.
That's funny. Oh yeah. I mean, so this is the 1700th anniversary of Nicaea, and so I'll put out a video that's something like what the Council of Nicaea actually meant to the people who were there. And what people still don't understand is there were no Trinitarians at the Council of Nicaea. There were no formal Trinitarians by the modern standard definition until about 360 AD, and Nicaea was in 325 AD. At the Council of Nicaea, in his closing speech, Constantine calls Jesus the second God, who is obedient to the commands of the first God, who is evidently supreme, right? So, like, if you want to call that Arian, I mean, obviously, Arius does get excommunicated at the council, so it wouldn't be correct to call the Council of Nicaea Arian. But if you by Arian you just mean think Jesus is a subordinate secondary deity, as opposed to the actual fine details of Arius's theology, then yes, the Council of Nicaea was Arian.
It was very amusing. Doug Wilson recently put out a video discussing whether or not the magistrates can call a synod or council.
Yeah. Can they do it again? And why not?
Well, apparently some of the Westminster confessions say yes and some of them say no. And that's why King Charles, the defender of the faith, should actually get to decide everything for your religion, obviously.
Oh man, that's interesting.
King Charles III.
Can he decide the date of Easter? Oh man, that it circles back to that question that we were having earlier about who gets to decide dates about these things and why. And
how
what
do
sort of
you
authority.
decide when Easter is?
Oh, I don't know. I Google it. So like, so like honestly, it's one of those things most Protestants don't think about it. It's like, well, whatever. It's like asking why is Easter when it is like asking why is Christmas when it is. But those two things are actually very different questions, it turns out.
Well, no, actually, they're related questions. Although apparently, like they had this idea that Jesus had to be born exactly 9 months after because he had to be conceived on the day. So there is a Jewish idea that great people die on the day they are born. And that is an ancient Jewish idea. But apparently somebody at Nicaea had heard it wrong, and they thought that you were conceived on the day that you died if you're a righteous person. And
so then he has to be born 9 months after Easter.
Yes.
As opposed to 12 months.
Exactly.
You see, I grew up being taught that there was astronomical proof that Jesus was born on September 11th, 3 BC, I believe. And there was all these sort of, like, if you rewind the astronomical signs and stuff like that, and try and match it up with the birth narratives, that you get September 11th, 3 BC.
Okay, apparently the Annunciation is a different day than Easter. What do I know?
Yeah, and then you always have to have all of the different steps of Mary's process. Yeah, I mean, I do think, like, at some level, I kind of agree that there is sort of the idea that there was one church that Jesus founded, and that it does have authority vested within itself to do these things. And there is a certain way in which I do kind of think that the Roman Catholic Church is that, but it's also in a state of sort of, I don't know, non-compliance or something like that.
I am of the opinion that there is one church that Jesus founded, and Paul put an end to that pretty damn quickly.
Oh man, yeah.
Why not the Orthodox, Sam? Jules wants to know.
Actually, I mean, Peugeot had a video where he said something very similar to what I just said. And it was funny to hear Peugeot say it because I had had similar intuitions before.
Well, that is the Eastern Orthodox position. They do believe that the Bishop of Rome is primus inter pares.
Yeah, and that in some sense the current Pope is still technically kind of the Bishop of Rome, but he's in a state of
apostasy because he believes in the filioque
or something like that.
And I agree with them.
Yeah. And so I feel something kind of similar, that I have a half agreement with Roman Catholicism's claims about itself, but view it as in sort of a state of not quite being right and not needing to be submitted to.
How do you deal with that as somebody who believes that Jesus actually did anything when he died?
What do you mean? Well,
Like,
I mean, I think that,
he established a church over which the gates of hell has prevailed.
well, it's not like it's fully bad, right? It's like, and it's similar to how all humans, like, it mirrors the same human condition, that I am like this too. Do I have Christ in me? Yes. Am I fallen and still making mistakes all the time? Yes. And in the same way that it's true of me, it's true of the church in general.
So the Messiah hasn't come yet.
Well, in a certain sense, yes. I mean, like, I know what you mean. Like, he hasn't come again. Um,
So the new covenant of Jeremiah 31:31 obviously has not manifested itself.
well, it's in a state of non-full creation level actualization, except within Jesus himself. And that the process of Jesus being made fully united with the rest of creation is in process of becoming and isn't fully realized.
Jules, Father Stephen can come on here and discuss anything he likes as often as he likes. My channel is his channel, but he's busy playing Marvel Rivals because that's what Jesus wants him to do.
And I'll just tease Father Stephen that I can't wait for apology to be made to Paul of Samosata, the previous bishop of Antioch, who would be the bishop that Father Stephen is under, for having been falsely removed from his position and killed by the Romans at the request of the Roman Church. And so, when is the bishopric of Antioch going to make Paul Samosata a martyr and a saint? He's right up there with Michael Servetus.
What of Samosata?
Paul of Samosata.
Paul? Another Paul? We have too
Another
many
Paul.
Pauls.
He was bishop of Antioch in the 260s and 270s AD. And he was a biblical Unitarian who was removed from his post for that.
But the Antiochians nowadays say he was rightly removed.
Right. Yeah, probably.
Jules says Father Stephen is under Metropolitan Saba. I have no idea who Metropolitan Saba is.
I don't know who that is. I hear my baby crying. I probably need to go get him to fall back asleep and then go to sleep myself. You
only have 4 children. Why do you act like it's a lot of work?
It is a lot of work.
It is a lot of work.
So as being a school board member, those bus contracts don't decide themselves.
And working for the evil empire.
And working for the evil empire, whose stock price has been disappointingly bad recently. I just have to complain.
I've stopped Googling.
Yeah, well, fair enough. I mean, I kind of do too.
With Grok, I mean, Grok has made Google completely. Yeah, I don't know how Google's retaining value.
Yeah, Google needs to. Google's. I mean, I do have access to Google's internal AI stuff, and it is better than Grok at the general same tasks. So it's not like Google doesn't have it within themselves. Yeah, try Google Gemini 2.5. Isn't that pretty good, Jan?
Is it better than Grok 3?
I think so.
I wouldn't know. I guess I'll have to trust you.
But I mean, they need to make it as easy and user friendly as Grok is.
Yesterday, I asked Grok to say who I sound like, and I didn't tell it who I was, and so it didn't know. So it assumed I was Elon Musk.
All right. I got to go to bed.
Good night.
Good night.
Later. Okay. I should probably go to bed too. Should I play the outro? Let's see what people were saying. We had a Mark in the chat. Paul Vanderklay said, "I am the chief pastor in America. If you don't know any other ones." Don says, "I used to hang out at Tanakh Talk, but that crowd is very nasty and disrespectful about Jesus, and it started to get on my nerves." Honestly, that's my biggest thing with Tanakh Talk. And I understand a lot of them are former Christians, and because of that, they can be very bitter about Christianity. And it's very hard for the rabbis on Tanakh Talk to tone that down. Jan God says, "I always thought Noachides were Christians." No, most Noachides, most people who call themselves Noachides tend to be very anti-Christian. Not sure what you mean. The things you learn at Jacob's Corner. It's not just Rabbi Mullet and Ephraim Pavlonov who say that, Don. It's generally pretty much every Orthodox Jew says that. It's pretty clear. Oh no, even the Jews have redemption contingent upon repentance. Oh me, oh my. Jacob is scattered and hairless. This is true. Murdering family members is very biblical. This is also true. I have no idea what you're asking, Jules, about vestments. Weren't the high priests in the Old Testament wearing fine vestments? How are vestments bad? They're not bad, necessarily. What AI is most likely to flip me from Christian to Jew? I doubt any. Yep, we don't really do converts. If only there were one corner to rule them all or something. Can we get a Messiah criteria update if they're going to change the calendar? Do we want to finish the video from... There's like 30 minutes left. I guess we could continue doing the video from... what's the name? I am going to go get a drink.
And Jeff has sat on university campuses and torn that argument apart 47,000 times. He could do it in sleep. He probably does do it in his sleep because he doesn't get a lot of sleep these days. In fact, it was so awesome. Someone on Twitter, when he posted this stuff on Twitter over the weekend, I'll try to be nice. Somebody responded back to him, insulted him, used profanity, and said, "You bleep, 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 tell me, how many children in danger of abortion have you adopted?" And Jeff's reply had one symbol in it: 3. And I can tell you right now, very often we have a Signal group, no national secrets shared in it, but we have a Signal group amongst the elders. And if you've got something you need to say that's going to take a while, we normally do it by a voice text. And I can't tell you how many times when Jeff makes a comment on something, you're going to hear in the background one or more of those very small children that they have adopted as a part of putting their money where their mouth is and being consistent at this point. So, my thought to anybody who's going to be dumb enough as a Christian to criticize what Jeff is doing, until you're in that position, you might think about that before you make yourself look really, really dumb. So he's arguing presuppositionally. He is demonstrating the incoherence of her worldview, the contradiction between the self-proclaimed foundation and the traditions that she's actually holding to, which are not connected to this foundation, which means they have no foundation at all. She's being dishonest with herself and with everybody else. And so Jeff's like, this is how you respond to this. Now, let me put this down here, and let me see if I can find this here. Oops. There it is. I'm actually figuring out how to do this. And let's see if that's going to work. Look at that. Rich is going, yeah, I can teach this guy. He'll figure it out eventually. So here's Joel Webbin, and this was his comment on the clip that I just played for you with Jeff talking to this Jewish woman. According to this woman, many other Jews, abortion is a Jewish value. You cannot combat this evil by appealing to common ground that does not exist. Christians must become perfectly comfortable responding, your Jewish values do not matter because Judaism is evil. Okay? So notice, you cannot combat this evil by appealing to common ground that does not exist. Now, did Jeff do that? Well, he said we share the Jewish scriptures. And he then went to the Jewish scriptures to demonstrate no partiality, protection of human life, and hence that's in contradiction with the later tradition. And so he's not talking about, Jeff does not believe that we have neutral common ground with unbelievers. He said that 1,000 times. He wasn't saying that then. Instead, he has a matter of moments to respond to a modern leftist Jewish woman who has decided she can pick and choose her particular tradition that she's going to run with. And so he appeals to the scriptures, knowing that, and she did not, you'll notice, she did not reject the authority of the Tanakh. So it's like, okay, you accept that as religiously binding? Well, here's what it says. And so he's reasoning presuppositionally, arguing presuppositionally. And so I just want to ask everybody, what do you think, which perspective do you think would be more effective in the situation that Jeff is in? He obviously wants this bill to come up for a vote, and we'll keep pushing this session after session. We're making advancement. People are hearing, they're understanding how the pro-life movement doesn't want to abolish abortion. And so we're making progress. And he knows other committee members are listening, and they want to know how to respond to this too. So which is the most effective response to a Jewish representative? Jeff's holding her to her own professed acceptance of the Tanakh as binding religious authority from God, and his overarching assertion, we all believe that there is an ultimate authority over us. Well, the secularists might go, I'm not so sure about that. Even she might reject that. But he's forcing people to think that through and to realize you need to have an ultimate epistemological standard. And he's already said in his opening statement, God has made life. God will hold us accountable. And so which could be more effective? To counter her, demonstrate the inconsistency in her own worldview, the internal critique, speak to the others, because let's hope there's at least one or two Christians on that committee, maybe others that are willing to listen, haven't heard this before. They're going, wow, I had thought that through. That, up till now, her objection would have been pretty strong, but that's a great response. Or do the Webbin method. Your Jewish values do not matter because Judaism is evil. What do you think? What do you think? I know what I would suggest. I've never done a debate with a Muslim where I just skipped the argumentation and just went to, your Jewish values do not matter because Islam is evil. I guess there might be some people who think that's some kind of apologetic approach. It's not, but there might be some people who might think that way. And so, like I said, Joel once said, the only reason Joe Boot and I were invited to speak was because, hey, we're theonomists, we're postmillennialists, we're presuppositionalists. And Joe and I still are, and Joel, I don't think is. Not functionally. And I don't think he's going to stay that way confessionally. And in fact, given that recent church history thing, he has no reason to be a Baptist at all. So, yeah. But as soon as I saw that, I was like, you know what? I really want to respond to that. So, Rich, I don't have Signal up or anything, and I haven't received anything. Are we putzing along pretty good here? Because I still got a bunch of stuff to get to, and I just don't know how long I can go. I'm assuming things are still working fairly well. And so we can I can press forward with this. I had a bunch of screenshots I wanted to get to from Stephen Wolfe, and so I'm not going to bother full screening this. Coming through, great. Okay, all right. But there were a number of Stephen Wolfe likes to mock the term sacralism. Unfortunately, he also demonstrates he doesn't understand sacralism. He hasn't read Verdine. I specifically challenged him on that recently, and so here's a couple screenshots here. I'll pull up. So notice over on the right, the coffee was so good this morning that I took a sip and shouted sacralism. Yeah, that's what I do when I drink coffee too, because I hate coffee. But then notice next to that, right here, I need to sort of move it over a little bit so I can see a little better. He says, I don't give sacralism a deeply thoughtful response. Yep, there you go. That's true. I've never seen a deeply thoughtful response from Stephen Wolfe on sacralism. And I won't. Because I don't think it deserves it. Well, think about it. He doesn't know anything about it. He's not read any primary stuff, but he's come to the conclusion it doesn't deserve it. So, hey, let's not worry about it. It is a new term trying to capture several very different political theologies. No, it's if you want to call it new, in Verdine's use of it, whatever, that's fine. There's all sorts. Just think today. How many new terms are being used? How many new terms are these guys using? How many terms are Stephen Wolfe using? So that's not really much of an argument. But it's not political theologies. It's how theology has been captured by political power, starting with Constantine and developing slowly over time with the help in fits and starts of Christian theologians down through the ages. When unum sanctum is linked with simply banning atheism, I don't see the use. Well, unum sanctum, if you're not familiar with it, made the ultimate claim that you have to be in submission to the Bishop of Rome to experience salvation. That says other things, but it was really at the height of that period of papal development. But when he says, I don't see the use, remember, this is the same guy who can't see the incredible usefulness of the term worldview in a day when there's all sorts of worldviews. So it's like, no. So I treat it as a rhetorical device rather than a useful term in intellectual discussion. Well, do forgive us who are not nearly on your high altar of intellectual level. So playbook, describe a few acts of violence in church history, call all that sacralism, call your opponent sacralist. That's pure demonstration of the man who is willing to opine about something about which he is absolutely, positively, completely, and willfully ignorant. Has no idea what he's talking about and is proud of it, is happy about it. And there's lots of people who go, yeah, that's what I want to do. That's good stuff. Yeah, super duper. All right. So there were some others here, but I made the statement. Let me just look at just real quickly here, just a second. Webin. Yeah, just real quickly. Remember that for Stephen Wolfe, the term revivalism is what he uses to. Here you go. Revivalist postmillennialism is another expression of the conservative trying to escape politics. And what is revivalist postmillennialism? Well, again, I guess he gets to define all these things rather than those of us who actually believe these things. But revivalist postmillennialism is the Puritan hope. If you read the Puritans, the people who started all those Ivy League schools and stuff like that to train ministers of the gospel because they believed that Christ would, bring the nations to heal. It's the idea that the only way that the fulfillment of Scripture, every knee will bow, all enemies put under his feet, Psalm 2, Psalm 110, et cetera, the only way for that to be fulfilled is for a revival, not a revival in the sense that we're used to it in the West, but a worldwide work of the Spirit of God, drawing the elect unto himself in a way that we've never seen in history. That's postmillennial revivalism. Revivalist postmillennialism is another expression of the conservative trying to escape politics. It has nothing to do with it. This man is so confused. It is astonishing. It truly is. But let me ask a question. Let's think about it for a second. What if the Spirit of God moved, breaking men's hearts, bringing conviction of sin, directing them to Jesus Christ? Not just in a external sense, but true, long-lasting conversion. A majority of people all across the world. What would that do to politics? Change everything, wouldn't it? Radically so. Because now these people want to hear the voice of Christ. They want to be in submission to him. They want their government to be under submission to him. Not the other way around, where the government puts them under submission to these laws. They want these laws. They seek after God's Torah, is how Isaiah puts it. Would that change politics? Of course. And I think I almost get the feeling he fears that what it would do is it would make politics completely subject to theology, which it would, actually. Think about it. All right. Want to get that one out there, too. So I'm not going to be on this for a long period of time. I might actually finish up on time, but we'll see how long this one goes if I can find where in the world I put it. Yeah. Did you see this? I will do the Jay Dyer thing. I'm not sure why I did that. Did you see this? The British Sentencing Council has decided that starting Tuesday, white men will be sentenced to longer prison sentences than women and ethnic minorities. I just, the speed at which that beautiful nation that I have had such wonderful times in, the speed with which it has fallen, just simply come apart is, wow. It could happen just as fast here too. Have to pray for God's mercy. All right, I made the statement. There it is. I made the statement on Twitter that, yeah, okay, this thing had been sent to me by a couple different people. This is evidently one of the means by which Jay Dyer makes money. As I look at it, there's I don't know what the scan thing is. Jay Dyer has never understood that you need to have light coming on your face. His videos are the lowest of the low as far as technology is concerned. Just wow. I mean, I sort of fight with Rich about it doesn't have to be perfect. He wants it to be absolutely perfect. I just want it to be something I can put up and take down and then get to lunch or dinner or whatever it is. But I mean, he's got this flamingo and a palm tree behind his head, and it's lit up. So his face is dark, and you know, he's sitting there in a t-shirt, and he just looks like he's bored, he's angry, he's condescending, he's arrogant, he's mean-spirited. I don't know why anybody would even spend time with this man. I mean, wow. It's just amazing. So what's happened is somebody has told this guy who doesn't know who Jay Dyer is, has no idea what he's getting himself into, to come into this thing. And this is what Jay Dyer thinks debating is. Jay Dyer thinks he's debating. A debate for Jay Dyer is something he is in control of. His victory is assumed from the start. And once it gets to a point where he's tired of talking to you, he's just going to kick you off and go to somebody else. So he's going to win all the time. It's just, it really is third grade, fourth grade playground level immaturity on this guy's part. I am astonished. Why don't I see the mature Eastern Orthodox people going, oh, no, whoa, that guy, no, But like I said, that's not what I see. It's a shame. This guy calls in, somehow gets on, and is talking to him about justification. It's a 11-minute clip. I just want to play a few minutes of it. Just first of all, to give you a sense of what this guy's about, because this guy's trying to look at the scriptures. And right at the beginning, he's like, "Oh,
I have to say, the mature Eastern Orthodox people I have heard do actually kind of go against Jay Dyer." What are all the people saying? I feel like this man is fighting a battle that is already lost. Yeah, I mean, Protestantism, yeah. I did not listen to Rabbi Burton's Exodus commentary. I probably should be listening to Rabbi Burton's Exodus commentary instead of James White, but James White is much more entertaining for my Yetzer Hara. So what can I say? Yeah, doesn't Jay Dyer not go to church at all?
your position is stupid because your position is nominalism, and nobody believed nominalism back then, and therefore it can't possibly be what the apostles were saying. And not dealing with scripture, it's just all this external stuff because Jay Dyer's an expert at everything, at least according to Jay Dyer. That's obvious. But let's listen to some of this, and then we'll take a few moments, look at Romans 4, make a couple points, and wrap things up. By the way, before we do this, in case I forget, might be able to do something Thursday. Probably not. But if I can't, then we will be posting the link, and the debate will be live streamed on Friday. So that's at least 2.5, close to 3 hours on Friday of live content. So keep that in mind. So let's switch over here and just catch a little piece of this here.
Yeah.
Oh, but he's not saved yet.
Well, listen. Well, when was he declared righteous by God? You tell me. When does the Bible say that he was declared righteous by God?
Now, do you see him? Did you see that there? I mean, this is spirit-born patience. flowing from our Orthodox champion, as you'll see here in a moment. Now the guys, so what had happened just before this, I thought it was queued up a little before this. Jay Dyer saying, look at all the stuff that Abraham did before Genesis 15, but he wasn't saved yet. Now, maybe you can get away with this guy, I suppose, but this is probably why he won't do real debates. He won't debate real people with equal time where he can't pull the plug and he can't behave like a child, is because the actual assertion, like if he had read The God Who Justifies, which I'm sure he has not, then he would know that when we're talking about Genesis 15, when we're talking about in Romans 4, is when Abraham believes what? A specific promise given to him in covenantal form in Genesis 15. Abraham has believed in God. He's even obeyed God. But the issue is, when does Abraham believe unto righteousness? Paul's answer is Genesis 15. Jay Dyer's answer is not Genesis 15. Rome's answer is not Genesis 15.
Jacob's
the
answer
issue.
is not Genesis.
It's
15.
Paul against Rome and Orthodoxy. So watch what happens.
And
When did
Jacob.
comfort for
I'm
righteousness?
showing the stupidity of your interpretation of Romans 4.
Okay, that's an assertion. That's an assertion that you're making. You're not really backing it up, though. So
I'm backing it up by the fact that shut up, or you're gone. In verse,
See, this is what he thinks a debate is. Shut up, or you're gone. I'm in control. See, I am so cool. I am so smart. And if you don't shut up, I'm gonna get rid of you. Me with my, I can't figure out what lighting is behind me.
okay.
in verses 7 and 8, he worships the Lord. God obviously accepts.
I wonder what, I mean, is my lighting pretty bad? My lighting's not so bad, is it? I mean, it's going off my glasses, and I do tell people to shut up, don't I? Jules says, thank you, RJ. Thank you very much. I'm still mad at Dyer for attacking Archbishop Alexander. James White is kind of silly, especially after the denying the existence of Saint Ignatius. He didn't actually deny the existence of Saint Ignatius. I thought that was kind of silly of people to misstate him like that. His shirt and background are really throwing me off. Oh, James White, yeah. What's this about Abraham being saved? Yeah. Christians have this idea of being saved, which is like weird. Thank you, Don. Your lighting is fine. I'm sitting in a room with orange walls with yellow lights behind me. I would look absolutely frightening on camera right now. Okay, maybe. Kivshan Ha'esh? No, he no. Okay, so Paul of Tarsus, although I don't know if this is in the genuine writings of Paul, because it's actually in the he's talking about a biblical verse that actually means what he's trying for it to say in the Bible, and Paul never does that. But you know where it says "V'nechshav lo tzedakah," right? Where is it here? Let's actually do some Bible. So, I think it's nechshav lo tzedakah. Genesis, Tanakh. No, this isn't Genesis. So let's go to Genesis 15. After this, God said, Vehemin bahashem veyachshaveha lo tzedakah. 15:6. Vehemin bahavaya, right? He believed in the Lord. Vayachshaveha lo tzedakah, and it was counted it to him for righteousness. So Paul has this idea, right, that a person who believes in God Here, let's find where Paul says this. So this is 15:6, Genesis 15:6. It is quoted in Romans 4:3. So this is apparently actually part of Paul's. Shockingly, Paul actually gets scripture correct for once. If Abraham was indeed justified by works, he had something to boast about, but not before God. For what does the scripture say? Abraham believed God, and it was credited to him as righteousness. Now, the wages of the worker are not credited as a gift, but as an obligation. So there's this idea that Paul has this, that it is the faith that justifies. Nechshav lo, what's the actual biblical verse? Vayachshaveha lo tzedakah. So this is one of the most primary of Christian things that they fight about. Hello, Charlie. Lashawan Kadash. Yes, exactly. Famous verse. Yeah. No, it is most definitely not as famous to Jews as it is to Christians. Hi, Chezi. I see Jacob is still enamored with Paul. Aren't I always? He didn't need a miracle, but some say it's talking about Hashem, Ramban, I think. I have no idea what you're saying. Chezi, I have absolutely no idea what you're saying. If I just believe hard enough, then reality will change for me, right? Lol, correct. Yes, Genesis and Abraham are pretty famous among Jews, but Vehemin b'Hashem v'yachshaveha lo tzedakah is not that as much, because the fact is that after that, God gives him tests him with the whatchamacallit? With the Akedah. And after the binding of Isaac, it says, now I know that you have faith. What was it? Where is it? V'ata yadati. Here, v'ata yadati. Genesis ki ata yadati. Genesis 22:12. V'yomer al tishlach yadcha el hana'ar v'al ta'as lo me'uma ki ata yadati ki yireh Elokim ata v'lo chasachta et bincha et yachidecha mimeni. For now I know, right? In Genesis 22, it says, now I know that you fear God. And that's after he actually did what God said. But Christians forget that part. I hope I explained it. The verse is referencing that Abraham didn't need the miracle, but some say Abraham is talking about Hashem. Huh. Mm. Oh, Vayachshav lo tzedakah, as he thought God is righteous. That's interesting. That's, well, I mean, you can't go wrong with the idea that if that's how Paul reads the Bible, it must be wrong. His argument is that Gentiles aren't made righteous by becoming Jews. It's true. But by being faithful to God. And Abraham was considered righteous before he was circumcised in his argument. Anyway, back to good old James.
This worship. He acts in faith for the next several chapters until Genesis 15.
Okay, so there's the argument. He hadn't been justified back then, right? That's the argument that Jay Dyer is making. I'm going to demonstrate to you, again, his argument is against Paul. His argument is based on tradition. But just notice the nasty, arrogant presentation that he's making. Does he really think this is attractive to people? I don't know.
How come he has a QR code? That's how he makes money, with the QR code? Guys, send me money. Do I need to send you a QR code?
Theology doesn't let him go, well, Spirit of God take care of it.
So this refutes your stupid argument that he was saved in 15. So Romans 4 doesn't teach the Protestant view. It's just your assumption that it taught the Protestant view.
Okay, let me ask you this. Roman.
Now you're going to change the subject.
I am not going to change the subject. I'm trying.
So was he not saved for 3 chapters of good works?
Can I ask the question?
You're not. No. Was he not saved?
No, because it doesn't say he was declared
Okay, so yeah, you're an idiot. So
Okay, and it just goes, so you're an idiot. I am stunned that I took this guy seriously. Obviously, I had not. Maybe he was more serious in the past. Now, obviously, he's just completely out to lunch. And it's a sad thing to watch. But it also bothers me to have divine truth being so slaughtered by someone that's so disrespectful to it or things like that. So I just realized I could put the Bible up here too. Huh? Oh, yes, I can. I hadn't even thought about doing that. But let's just for a second. It's just now 1 hour, just a couple minutes. I know we've done this before. I get it. Algo could do this with his eyes closed. But let's just look at this for a second, okay? What then shall we say that Abraham, our forefather according to flesh, was found? Or if Abraham was justified by works, he has something to boast about, but not before God. For what does Scripture say? Abraham believed God, was counted him as righteous. Genesis 15:6. Okay, Genesis 15:6, the second most cited text from the Old Testament in the New Testament. And then we have this. As I've said many times, if we put verses 4 and 5 in parallel to one another, you'll see to the working one here and to the not working one in verse 5. So
hold on.
To the working one.
Who else cites it if it's not just Paul? I found it here. Let's ask Grok. Grok. How many times and where is Genesis 15? Which verse in Genesis was it? 15, what? 15. Oh, shoot. What was it? Genesis 15. 6. 15:6 cited in the Christian scriptures.
Amistas ulagizatai, the wage is not reckoned or imputed katakarin according to grace or as something's free, Allah kata ophailema, but according to what is owed. So your wage to the one working is owed. These are all standard terms found in the papyri at this time of employment, debt, contracts, stuff like that. But to the not working, pistuanti de, but believing. So this is the contrast term. So the not working that's not just where it stops. It's not just not working one, but believing one. Believing upon what? Epiton dikai unta, ton asabe, the one justifying the ungodly. That is such a startling statement that Joseph Smith negated it in his Joseph Smith translation. The God who does not justify the God.
Okay, so Grok is saying to us, citations in the New Testament, Romans 4:3, 4:9, 4:22, so all in Romans. Galatians 3:6, so again, Paul, and I believe Galatians is authentic Paul. And James 2:23. So must have been that he saw James cited it, and that's why Paul had heard of this Bible verse. That's my guess. But okay, back to our good friend James White.
Hey, piss this out too. His faith, Lagidzatai, is reckoned aistakaiasune, as righteousness. And then he gives as his foundational argument from Psalm 32, just as also David speaks concerning the makrisman, the blessing to anthropu, hohatheos lagidzatai dikaiasune kodes ergon, of the man to whom God reckons righteousness, kodes ergon, without works, not works of the law, but apart from works. That's the attitude of verses 4 and 5. The person is not expecting anything, does not believe there's any merit in what the person is doing. But then the text cited does not talk about imputation of righteousness, does it? Blessed are those whose lawless deeds are forgiven, whose sins are covered. Blessed is the man to whom the Lord will not impute sin. So the Psalm 32 citation from the Greek Septuagint, 31 in the Septuagint, but anyway, is in the context of the non-imputation of sin. The only way that sin can be non-imputed to the one who commits sin is if it's imputed to the sin bearer. So Jesus takes our sin in his body upon the cross. His righteousness is imputed to us, and therefore you have the blessed man. Every single true believer in Jesus Christ is a blessed man of Romans 4:8, to whom the Lord will not impute sin. That's the glorious truth. But here is the refutation of Jay Dyer. This is why Jay Dyer would have to cut me off early on, because he can't answer this one. All he can do is bluster and do everything else. Now, therefore, is this blessing upon the circumcised or upon the uncircumcised? For we say it was reckoned to Abraham, his faith was reckoned to Abraham as righteousness. How, therefore, was it reckoned? While being circumcised or while being uncircumcised? Not while circumcised, but uncircumcised. And he received the sign of circumcision, a seal of the righteousness of the faith which he had while uncircumcised, so he might be the father of all who what? Believe, whether circumcised or uncircumcised. So here's the point. If you say, as Jay Dyer did while calling people idiots and stupid and all the rest of this kind of stuff, if you say that Abram was justified in Genesis 12 for chapters beforehand, which is what he was saying. We heard him saying it, right? Yeah. If you say that, Paul's point is refuted, right? Because Paul places a specific temporal location to Abram's justification. And it's before receiving the sign of circumcision, right? Because see, like people like Robert Sejenis, they will say Abraham was justified multiple times in his life. He was justified in Genesis 12, Genesis 15, Genesis 22, Isaac, so on and so forth. Paul's whole point is that the faith of Abraham, and this is how Abraham becomes the father of all the faithful, whether circumcised or uncircumcised, is that he believed the covenant promise of God in Genesis 15:6. And as a result of that belief, before receiving circumcision, the covenant promise not given before, as it's given in Genesis 15, here's where he believes, here's where he receives righteousness. The non-imputation of sin. Read verses 6, 7, and 8. So it happened at a point in time, not in Genesis 22, not in Genesis 12. It's in Genesis 15. You have the covenant promise, you have the covenant being made, Abraham exercises faith, he receives righteousness. So trying to drag out, oil was he shaved? That's not terminology of Genesis. That's not even terminology of Paul. Which makes me wonder, just how much did Dyer even understand of? Because he's been different perspectives, but people can be of lots of different perspectives and not accurately represent what in the world they were talking about before. So, I don't know who this guy was that called in. I'm sure he was not overly impressed, even if he didn't have answers for everything that he said. You couldn't possibly be overly impressed with the kind of behavior that Jay Dyer cannot escape, evidently. Just doesn't have the maturity to escape. So yeah, there you go. So hopefully that's useful for somebody to consider and for you to share with other people because it is an important issue to be able to discuss. Hey, I can't tell you how excited I am about how well this worked. One of the reasons is Rich is there's a rat's nest of cables over there, and Rich informs me that what is over there is also underneath the table in the main dividing line studio. I don't know if that means there's another rat's nest in the big studio too. I don't know, but he put it all together. He spent hours in here because what would throw me off before was I'd have to have the TV remote and this thing here and pressing buttons over here, and I start talking and my microphone wasn't on, and it made it difficult to do. First run through, and I don't think my microphone was left off. I don't think I was able to hear without messing with the TV. And
yeah, it's funny how much Christians are so. I did not realize Christians were so obsessed with circumcision, especially physical circumcision. But they are.
Hopefully the sound was good, and I could put stuff up. And now I'm dangerous. Now I am very, very dangerous. So I might try the next time having my other monitor and putting that one up there so that things could just be there and I'm not having to drag stuff up. That would be the next step of advancement until what? I don't know. But there you go. So there you go. That's like I said, if I can sneak something in, let me see here. No, that's not happening. No, not happening. No, it's just get used to it. It's good. We're fine. We're all fine here now. So he wants me to put this microphone on my shirt. If I'm wearing certain kinds of shirts, heavier shirts that don't sag because or something like that, I did that a couple times when I was in the hotels and stuff like that. But it's on a perfectly nice stand right here. It's right there, and it's perfectly good. It's just fine. Don't need to be messing with everything else. So got to keep him always wanting something more. Can't just do everything he wants to do. Have to have a little rebellious streak going on there. So Friday, I think it's 6:30. We'll post the link. Hopefully throw it in the app as well for the live debate on the King James issue coming up this Friday. Looking forward to that. Been doing a lot of studying, and I've learned a lot this week. Actually, the past couple of weeks. If I ever do an updated version of the book, another edition, or redo it, picked up a lot of stuff. Yes, and as Rich has to pay the bills, travel fund at aomin.org is how we pay for this RV park I'm in right now, which it's the people are nice and everything works. Though when I was setting up, I was looking across and there's a unit over there, there's a car parked up front with flat tires. It's just sort of like, I got the feeling they've been here a while. I'm not really sure, but anyway. But yes, that's how we pay for the that green gold that I pour into the tank, my 32-gallon diesel tank. I got pretty low on that one today at one point, but I got where I need to go. And so if you want to help us continue to do that kind of thing, travel fund at aomin.org will help us to do that. And Lord willing, we'll definitely see you on Friday for the live debate. Thanks for watching, and God bless.
That was James White. You like James White, Shadow? Shadow doesn't seem impressed with it. Anybody else impressed? Classical Protestants, but it can be found earlier as well. It is frankly tough to square the two verses together in ways other than that. And the classical Protestants believe works necessarily accompany true faith. Necessarily accompany true faith. Like, they don't even care about what a Brit covenant is, let alone that of circumcision in Abraham's case. Correct. Yep, Chezi did not show up. Chezi just showed up. Hello, Mr. Chezi.
Good morning, Jacob. How are you?
Baruch Hashem. Boker Tov.
Good morning, Safra Tava.
Yeah. Now you're speaking Aramaic to me. Wow.
You know, the halacha about that is if you wake up in the morning, but it's before you prayed, right? And you can't say good morning yet. Be sure you shouldn't be speaking before you. The first person you should be talking to is God. So if you see someone on the way to synagogue, you can answer, but don't answer in Hebrew. Say good morning in Aramaic. So you're
Because God doesn't understand it.
no, but
It's a joke.
Jacob, look at all this drama with all our Christian brothers.
What drama? What drama?
Was he circumcised? Was he saved? Wasn't he saved? Is he righteous?
Well, Baruch Hashem, they're actually arguing about Torah.
I know. That's why I'm saying the conversation you and Sam were having, and it actually makes me makes me happy. Look at this beautiful. Could you imagine a scene where oh, there's this Jew and Christian, they're just chilling and talking. He's lying down. It's we're Jews invited to the symposiums.
Aha. Well, actually, I mean, it's kind of wondrous that even after everything happened with the Crusades, apparently Rashi still talked to the local monks near him. At least that's what I am told.
I've heard that. I've heard that also someone else. I'm forgetting who. You and I spoke about this once, but someone else that had would basically would go and have sort of private sessions in a monastery. Actually, some rabbis going in there to sort of learn and talk and discuss with the people over there. But maybe now it's more. 1 second, let me not be rude as I see my wife walking by me.
Wow, your wife.
I forgot to throw out the garbage.
How dare you forget to throw out the garbage?
I know. I did the other 7 things on the list of the morning list, but I did forget the garbage. May God forgive me. So your conversation with Sam actually asked me about my thoughts on Tivia Singer. And I gave him a similar answer that you did, sort of where his attitude. Even though I said that he has mentioned in the past that his issue is not with Unitarians. There's just not many of them, so it's not really a conversation that he gets into.
Yeah, I mean, generally, I think Tovia Singer actually has, and there are a lot of Jews who genuinely they're not enamored with this Jesus guy.
So I'm learning with my older brother, my rabbi. Well, both of them are older, my brothers. My rabbi brother.
Yeah.
We are doing Perek Helek of Sanhedrin. And we're doing it. We're doing a deep dive. Even though he is having a very hard time that we're not focusing on Pesach right now. But either way, we were, and this isn't related to what you just said, that it's less about loving Jesus or loving Muhammad. It's more about understanding that our rabbis, our sages, were already having conversations with individuals with the philosophies of.
Did we lose Chazi? I think we lost Chazi.
This goes back to the Rambam you and I always quote, that there's clearly more than meets the eye with Christianity and Islam. And if the mindset is going to be that this is something that basically needs to be squashed out and ignored or railed against, again, there are periods in time when we're being persecuted and being killed. So we have to understand, obviously, why there's no lost love necessarily, but that doesn't mean we can't move past that and figure out how to ultimately work together. So
okay, but look, the question does become: do you believe that, for example, Sanhedrin put Jesus to death or not? Right? Which, I mean, to read the Talmud says that more than the Christian Bible does.
I mean, that's getting into which Jesus are you talking about? How many Jesuses were there?
Correct, right? And that's the thing. Like, so when I have Keith Foskey on, I want to talk about this stuff because I think it's necessary that knowledgeable Jews start addressing it. I don't know if you saw on Discord, one of the guys was asking all about the various Gemaras, etc. Right? And the fact is, within the Jewish community, we haven't really, like, what's shot in that Gemara with Onkelos? I don't think people talk about it very much. Kazi?
Wait, which one? Jacob?
Yes.
Jacob, which Talmud? Which Talmud? Which tractate are you talking about? Talmud portion are you talking about where he's bathing?
The one with
excrement?
Onkelos.
You need to remind me right now.
You know the one with Onkelos where he uses necromancy? And Charlie, it's not like I'm keeping you off my whatchamacallit. You're the one who left my server. I didn't kick you. Here you go.
You mean the one where he flies?
No. Where he brings up Jesus and Bilam and Titus.
Yeah, okay. Now I'm with you. Yeah. I forgot about that. So that's what you want to discuss with your guest.
Well, I don't know if specifically that particular one, but
well,
Charlie,
I was giving him an example, my brother an example where we were talking about Ishmael, and this is part of the conversation when Gabbai ben Psasia, this guy that he sent in Sanhedrin from the Jews, he goes talks to have these debates with different groups, and every time he goes to the rabbis and say, like, send me, I'm a hunchback, right? If I embarrass myself, I'll just be embarrassing me, and if I do a good job, then I'm obviously it's in the name of the Torah of Moses, right? So like it's you're not risking exposing yourself or embarrassing yourself as like the Sanhedrin of Israel. And he goes around having these different discussions talking about the resurrection of the dead and other things. But when he's talking about when he's talking to the Ishmaelites, so there's a discussion there about Keturah being, we know Keturah being or Hagar, being the daughter of Pharaoh. And I was discussing with my brother how it is the Talmud trying to tell us that, like, no, listen, really, the daughter of the Egyptian Pharaoh decided to, after the meeting with Abraham, decided to like leave and become Abraham's maidservant. Like, does that make sense? Is that what the Talmud's telling us, or is the Talmud trying to tell us that the culture of Egypt, right, was being fused together? Like Abraham was seeing the relevant elements of the culture of Egypt and is trying to put those together with, the commandments that God has given to him and this new moral roadmap that he has. And that also goes back to the conversation with Jesus, right? When he's like, when he's sitting in a bath of boiling excrements. That's not what our sages are trying to talk about. It's much deeper than that. And people also have to realize that in such a deep text, you can't expect to have like this, like, oh, it must mean that they're just trying to call him out. And that's what all it's talking about. So I would say if you're having
if you read the actual Gemara, the Maskana of the Gemara is read Ma Bein Poshe Yisrael Nevi'ei HaUmot HaOlam. It's actually very very kind to Jesus if you're reading it in context. But
In context.
again, people don't actually bother to get shot in that Gemara. Not to mention that it's a bit of a Agadita.
Yeah, but the way I look at Agadita and even Midrash is, and we forgot about that, but that's where Chazal, our rabbis, would double click and get deep into the idea they're trying to explain. But over the years, we've looked at that as like, no, that's just like a cute little idea. I think that's where the meat is.
Yeah, actually, so HH brings up there are other parts of, so we were talking about Gittin 57a. The part in Sanhedrin is the part where it says, Shani Hatam Sheyeshu Hayat Karav LaMalchut, something like that. Like that's brought as a halachic maaseh. Like that's the only one that really is halachic. And we lost Chazi again. Kid is not the material for this place. I don't know who Kid is. What do you mean? Yeah, I am having Pastor Foskey on. Not sure why we need a struggle session. Who says anything about a struggle session? But the fact is, I mean, if you look on Twitter, you see all these Christians supposedly darshaning Talmud and talking about, I've read the Talmud, and it's like, come on, are you being serious? Eric says, gave a talk at Hebrew University Physics Department today on the geometric basis for dark energy. Since it's April 1st, April Fool's Day, as it were, I wanted to leave this formula here for the future. I predict that this formula will be the replacement for the cosmological constant. There's an alpha there. I don't know all the Greek stuff, but there's definitely an alpha there. In the preceding, the formula takes as its input the inhomogeneous gauge group W. Pi is the variable ranging over the gauge potentials. Epsilon is the variable ranging over the gauge transformations. The theta tensor is valued in the adjoint bundle valued one forms. Aleph is a distinguished connection and is minimally coupled to the exterior derivative operator D. I genuinely believe that this, and not the so-called cosmological constant, is the dominant force in the universe, pushing for the expansion of the space-like volume in the observed universe. Thanks to everyone who came to Jerusalem for the talk today. It's a pleasure exploring this with you in depth. Einstein and the Einstein field equations, an innovator at odds with his innovations. Okay. The introduction of such a constant implies a considerable renunciation of the logical simplicity of the theory. Since I introduced this term, I had always a bad conscience. I am unable to believe that such an ugly thing should be realized in nature. Lastly, for those of you asking Grok to help, let me address Grok directly. Hey, Grok, this is just for you. The point being that the usual CC term, cosmological constant, I'm guessing that is valued in the space of symmetric two tensors. So long as the adjoint bundle has a summed that looks like degree 1 forms and valued 1 forms, will also have a sector that looks like symmetric two tensors. The point being that I am suggesting moving the space of metrics as field content and beyond McDowell-Mansouri focus on AG, which also lacks a compelling DE candidate, to focus on function space group valued field content. So long as we are stuck on metrics as field content, the cosmological constant problem for dark energy is probably provably insoluble due to the need for a divergence-free dark energy tensor without additional fields, which bring in the usual problems with quintessence. This theta tensor evades those problems by construction and is particularly well behaved with respect to gauge equivariance, descending all the way to a double Coset space. Picture of Grok with smoke coming out of his ears from trying to help Eric Weinstein with his math homework. That's hilarious. Okay. Where were we? Chazi failed me, yes. Learned about the law of return today. Interesting. Well, not sure how interesting it is. It's like just picking up a physics textbook having no math prerequisites. Oh my God, just go back to Hebrew. Jonathan, there is also no sense of proportion with these people. The parts that supposedly mention Jesus are a tiny part of the Talmud. This is true. That is absolutely true. Gamma Ni Psi Chi. I have no idea what that means. So we're reading Talmud again. Are we? Are we though? Okay. It's been almost 3 hours. I think I might put an end to this farce. Why are there so many people watching when nobody's jumping on? Okay. Good night. Yeah, Dawn said good night, so I am going to put an end to this farce.
I'm going to use host's prerogative to put the Reverend Parcells to bed because he does need to get up in the morning.
Sorry, Reverend. Thank you.
But before he goes, I have a question. Let's say, God forbid, that I were to burn somebody at the stake for not being a Trinitarian. And I did not repent of that. Is that a salvation issue?
Sometimes Jacob takes that devil's advocate thing too far.
There a proverb that says something like, don't answer a fool according to his folly.
But there's a proverb that says, answer a fool according to his folly.
There is. Exactly right. I'm going to leave it to you guys to determine, which of those was applicable in this situation as I go. So, but anyhow, good.
Thank
It was
you,
good
Reverend.
to
Thank
chat
you.
with you all.
Thank you.
Good night.
The